You good to go, Marcus? Good to go, Allison?
Absolutely.
Team's ready to go? Is Mike working? You working? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Palm Coast City Council Workshop. Today is Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. It's 6 p.m. We're in the community wing of City Hall, and I would like to give everyone a quick update on Ray. His wife just texted. Well, I called her and then she texted me. She said he's doing better. They're getting him up and moving. So make sure you say an extra prayer for the Stevens family when we do our Pledge of Allegiance and our short moment of silence, please. If you join me in a moment, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Allison, if you could call the roll, please.
Of course. Mayor Norris?
Here.
Vice Mayor Panieri?
Present.
Councilmember Gambaro?
Here.
And Councilmember Miller?
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Charlie, glad you're there. Okay, we're going to begin this evening's workshop with public participation. Please maintain decorum, no profanity, if you please, and speak into the microphone, state your name, and go ahead with your public comments. So the first person, please come up. No defamatory comments either, please. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, how are you? My name is Neftali de Jesus. I own 3 companies that are located in the city of Palm Coast, 1621 Building Remodeling. I'm a part owner of Florida Green Building Construction, and I'm also a part owner of Zaja Group. And I'm also the lead pastor of Rustic Fellowship in Bunnell, so not Palm Coast, but Flagler County. So I just want to read this to you because I'm not so good with words, even though I'm a preacher. So I'll stick with under 3 hours for you. A building moratorium in Palm Coast poses a serious threat to the constitutional rights of property owners, investors, and businesses. At its core, such a policy undermines the fundamental principles of private property rights, economic freedom, and due process, values that form the bedrock of the American legal system. The constitutional concerns are this. Number 1, the Fifth Amendment, taking clause. The Constitution ensures that private property cannot be taken for public use without just compensation. A building moratorium, even if framed as a temporary measure, can function as a regulatory taking, effectively depriving landowners of the ability to develop or profit from their own property. This is not just a legal technicality, it is also a direct violation of their rights. Number 2 is this, the 14th Amendment, due process and equal protection. The government cannot impose arbitrary restrictions on property owners without clear justification. A poorly structured, indefinite moratorium could strip individuals of their property rights without a fair legal process. It may also unfairly target certain developers, businesses, or residents, violating the principle of equal protection under the law. And the third thing is this, contracts clause, Article 1, Section 10. Many property owners and businesses enter into agreements based on existing zoning and development laws. A sudden moratorium could invalidate or disrupt legally binding contracts, causing severe financial hardships to families and small businesses that depend on construction and real estate investments. Beyond the legal implications, we must recognize the human costs of such a drastic measure. Many hardworking individuals, small business owners, construction workers, realtors, and families who have invested their savings into land or future homes would suffer deeply. Imagine a young family who saved for years to build their dream home, only to be told they must wait indefinitely, watching their costs skyrocket while their dreams are put on hold. Think of the local businessmen, plumbers, electricians, contractors, who rely on steady development to feed their families now facing an uncertain future. A building moratorium is not just a policy decision. It is a direct attack on the livelihoods, dreams, and constitutional rights of Palm Coast residents. While responsible growth is essential, any restrictions must be fair, legal, considerate of the people who call the city home. Let's work together to find solutions that balance progress and property rights without trampling on the freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Candy Stevens, P
Yes,
section. I'm going to talk about the moratorium too. This argument that this gentleman has, I respect that. But it's the argument that we've had in this city since I've been here. It's the very argument that we've had. They say Palm Coast economy is only built on building homes. And I heard you say that there is still 19,000 in the pipeline. So to me, you said that that was still going to continue with the moratorium. And you also said that we're under a state DEP regulation because our wastewater is over capacity. We all know that during the last hurricane. We all know that. I've been here for 10 years and that's never happened before. To me, it's because of the growth. The people that are sitting up there, all of you, have nothing to do with this. And I'm getting really upset listening to people that either are new here or haven't been paying attention crucify you for doing the very thing that we tried to get done last year with flooded in Flagler County. My home gets flooded now because of overdevelopment, because they were not building the homes correctly as far as heights go and with enough room between the homes for the drainage. You know what I'm talking about, the elevations. I've already been through all this before. So we need a moratorium. Teresa, you've tried to get one before. I've been behind you. All my group is behind you guys with this. We all know who the people that are talking are. You're not trying to take anybody's job away or anybody's livelihood away. You're trying to save our city so we have somewhere to work in the future, so our children have somewhere to work in the future. So I agree with the moratorium. I think you guys should do some sort of a number of permits allowable per year to keep us at a smart growth pace and still allow people to develop their homes. I also have other ideas for the utilities and stuff, but that's a different thing to talk about today. But I just want to let you know that those of us that have been here and those of us that are going to stay here are with you guys on this moratorium and whatever else we need to do to fix our infrastructure, because we all know the infrastructure here is crumbling. We all know that. We've been here. And I appreciate everything that you're doing. And I just wanted to make sure to know that you guys have my support, no matter what you decide, because I'm with you on that.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person for public comment, please. Yes,
Hi,
ma'am.
I'm sure you're facing a lot of backlash for wanting the possibility of a moratorium in place of raising our water rates. I'm going to use an analogy, and I hope y'all will bear with me. This is difficult, and I hope nobody ever has to experience this. When you end up on a gurney from a wound, and that wound is filled with all kinds of stuff, blood, whatever. The doctors, in order to fix that wound, they got to put their hands in there, and they have to cauterize the bleeders. And they have to make sure there's no more bleeding so that when they use that sucker thingy, you know, when you go to the dentist, you got that sucker thing, and you're praying to the Lord God Almighty, it doesn't go down your throat. You know what I'm talking about? Well, they put that in the guts, too, to suck out whatever's in there, too, okay, whether it be fluids or blood, whatever, nuts, okay? So you're going through that wound. They're going to explore, and hopefully they're going to find the cause of the bleeding. But before they can do that, they have to cauterize the bleeders. They have to stop the bleeding, because if they don't stop the bleeding, they cannot close that wound. Right now, Palm Coast is bleeding. It has been bleeding for many years. I have some colorful metaphors I'd like to use on 3 previous mayors and about 8 different councilmen. And that includes some city staff that are currently here and gone. Okay, so we need, I'm sorry, this is gonna hurt. When you make that wound bigger on that guy on that slab, okay, that wound is gonna hurt. It's not easy for that person to get back up after they've been poked and prodded and sucked, okay, while they're on that slab and trying to get healed. This city is going to hurt. We citizens, we residents are going to hurt. The builders are going to hurt. The developers are going to hurt. We need to find some compromise. We need to find some way that we can all live together and make this work. I'm sorry if it hurts. We should have caught it before. We should have smacked the poop out of them before. We tried, some of us. So anyhow, please, to my fellow residents, be patient with our city council. They did not lead us here. Our city council is trying very hard to fix this problem. They are the ones with their hands in the guts of the wound. Please give them a chance. And thank you all for hearing me.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person for public comment, please.
Good evening. My name is Bob Hannon.
Yes, sir.
My wife and I own a surveying firm in Palm Coast. We've been here since 2005 to 2008 when the real estate market crashed. And this was just about like a ghost town. We have a small surveying firm of only 5 people. And if you do the moratorium, it's going to put us out of business along with a lot of plumbers, electricians, painters. We need the construction. It's the backbone of the county. That's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir. Next person for public comment, please. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Regine Bernier, and I live in the R section in Palm Coast. I came 14 years ago, and it was a very quiet city at the time. We had 3 swimming pools, fitness, 1 indoor pool, which no longer exists, Belterra Swim and Racket Club, and Aquatic Center. Aquatic Center has 7 lap lanes, open now 9 to 2 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Belterra Swim and Racket Club only open on Saturday for the public from 9 to 3 p.m. Have 4 lap lanes. Why can't we extend the hour for both swimming pool until the YMCA is being built? This problem has been going on a long, long time. Listen to the resident of Palm Coast and help us to have a better life for the senior as well as for the youth. 20,000 people have moved in Palm Coast for the last 5 years. This has an impact on the swimming pool usage. Let's not waste our taxpayer. Let's make Palm Coast a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please silence your devices, please. Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name is Wilfredo Lleras. Okay, I've been living in Palm Coast for over 25 years. I want to congratulate this team for winning the election. Maybe you'll do a better job. Well, I got to say this not pertain to you. Please forgive me, okay? Okay, so here we go. I got two things I want to say about what is about the water that's going on, the tax of the water, but this is about the pool. Okay, for the 8 years I've been dealing with presentations and that. I'll try to make this short as possible. Last time I was here, I wanted people to go to the YMCA in Ormond Beach. No take. I wanted to pay for the bus and buy a pizza, but no one came out. Okay, because I wanted you to see the difference between one part and the other. Okay, we had 3 pools. Now we got 2 pools, but we don't even have any pools. The way it's going on over here, the hours. I'll try to make this as short as possible. The hours at the other pool is at the Ormond Beach. They're open 18 hours a day. It's open Saturday and Sunday. Some people work day and night. I try to make this very short. I know I work 24/7. I don't know about when I was bringing up my kids, okay? So you have one day Sunday. Why is Sunday open? The communication with the kids is priceless, because that's what they're going to remember, okay? Not the money, not the gift. The connection with the pools, okay? The pools, the water, the administration, and the maintenance, horrendous. I'll go fast, okay? Now, I have 0 help. Okay, I'll go quick here. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. What about the new people that are coming in? Thousands and thousands of people are coming in. People want to work out. They don't want to go to the hospital and take a pill. I needed a pacemaker. I needed a defibrillator. Okay? Zero. No, I can't afford I can't afford a cane. I can't afford a walker. And I can't afford a wheelchair. Welfare won't pay for it, okay? There you go. Now, I'm only kidding, okay? Now, lastly, this is all, okay, if you want to come in again, to show you that this plan works, the pool over there, the gym is open 24/7, okay? Lastly, the water thing, there's no water. Well, guess what? Israel has a lot of water. Why Israel's got a lot of water? Because there's a Mediterranean there, okay? The Mediterranean Sea, I was there. Navy, okay, I was there. Guess what they did? They opened this is going to knock your brains out, what I'm going to tell you. But it means it's common sense. You ever hear the word desalination? 2 miles out, go out there and you go to the desalination plant, have Flagler County purify all that water, and guess what? You're going to reduce the water. You're going to give the owners a rebate, and then you're going to sell the water to everybody else. And you're going to be the first one in all of Florida, okay, to do that. When I was in the Navy, I had to drink the best water in the world. You're not going to shade the clouds or nothing like that? Thank you, okay? Think about that. It's a plan.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you, sir. Next person for public comment, please. Yes, ma'am.
Rita Maderos in Grand Haven. My concern for the city, and as I don't know if you guys are aware of the 15-minute cities, the way the city is being brought up and overflooded with housing. I'd like you to take a look at Camden County over in Ozarks. They actually pulled down some of their lights, some of their video cameras so that they can't be tracked when it gets to the 15-minute city in 2030 when they expect to have the country filled with 15-minute cities. So I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but I would like you to look at that. With what I see developing, I don't see, you see Seminole Woods, you see building off of Colbert, you see all these started. They should be doing the infrastructure way before. To me, it looks like infrastructure is not being done on purpose so that we will be held within a certain area. That's my concern. If you haven't heard about it, I can get you more information, so.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person for public comment, please. Ladies first. Yes, Lisa. Lisa Perkins.
Okay, so we know you guys aren't the ones who caused this mess that we're in with the water, you know, but you have to, whether we do the moratorium, whether you raise the rates and go with the project, at the end of the day, we need to find out why we got here, who's kept signing off. You know, I know when the planning, when they're going to do a variance, when they're going, a builder wants to come and do a big development, they have to go through the planning process. Part of that planning process is going to each department within the city, right? And they all look, review it, sign off, oh yeah, this one's okay, we're good, we're good. Who kept saying we're good on the water? Who did not know that, wow, we're getting capacity here, guys. We can't do this commercial to residential. We can't do that, the lots for 200 to 300 now, so they can have, squeeze them all in and have extra. Who kept signing? Heads need to roll. Some heads need to roll. I'm sorry, but heads need to roll. If we're gonna have to suffer as a community, we need some justice here. We really do. And we need to get to the bottom of it and straighten this out so we don't get back here again to where we're at. And it's just plain as that. And I'm sure everybody has some ideas who those people are, but I'll leave it to you guys to do the investigating and find out. But that's a really tough spot for you guys to be in, but that's why you guys were elected to do that job, because we have confidence that you can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next person for public comment. Yes, sir. Nobody's going to get in front of you this time, I promise.
Not a problem. I have patience.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I moved here about 1.5 years ago. I love Palm Coast. I have a dog. I'm a Vietnam vet. I suffer from PTSD, and I've been treated for it. My dog is my lifeline. Unfortunately, my dog has bit someone. Nothing serious. It didn't require any stitches, but he's being listed in the dangerous dog category. In the dangerous dog category, Florida's statute are the same as ours, with the exception is our county has changed it so that it says they must be spayed. Well, what happens is that I've done a lot of research and found out that spayed animals actually, scientifically, has been proven research, they react negatively to it and they get more aggressive. So having this law on the books, what happens is my dog is going to be more aggressive than she was before. We don't need that. That law makes it counterproductive when you spay an animal or neuter an animal. Besides that, it also brings a lot of health problems as well. So I would like for you to take a look at that. I have some stuff I can give you later on or after this that you can take a look at as well. And please consider repealing that spay part of it. Last thing I need is for my dog to her behavior to be changed negatively. She's my lifeline, and I need some help.
Thank you, sir. You can
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Ma'am?
I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry.
Evaristo Gines.
Thank you.
If you could leave any documentation with the clerk, we'll take a look at it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
She'll get it to everyone. She's right here at the end. Next person for public comment, please. Yes, Mr. McDonald. McDonald. Yes,
Guess I
sir.
don't have to state my name for the record. Evening. You know, while all this is going on right here, I don't know if you know this or not, but this afternoon, you had the county manager down trying to sell the school board on the fact that she wants to take their money away from them and also increase the sales tax here in the county. So you got a lot of people here in the building business, and of course I was in the development business at one time. And it all affects us because what they're talking about doing is the county is talking about raising 1/2 cent sales tax, okay, on everybody here. That hurts everybody across the board. It hurts the builders. Why would you move to a county that has another 1/2% when you can maybe go someplace else? So be aware of that. Consider what's going on. And there's a shortage of money everywhere. Have you noticed? You know, it doesn't matter whether you're in Bunnell or whether you're in Flagler Beach or whatever. And the point I want to leave you with is just this, is that, you know, there's been a lot of discussion, seeing as how the county manager brought this up about the, you know, what to do about paying for the Army Corps of Engineers on the beach. I think most of us believe very simply this. Okay, it's a barrier island. The good Lord made it that way. And so if you chose to buy real estate on a barrier island, well, then you're going to have to step up. You paid more money to begin with. And so now what you're saying is you want us to pay for that on this side of the bridge. And it used to be, when I was here 25 years ago, okay, there used to be a saying that was pretty predominant here when the island was, how can I say, the mainstay. There was a whole lot percentage-wise, there were more people on the island than there were in Palm Coast. And they used to say, you know, that they didn't want to cross the bridge. Everything that they needed was, you know, on the island. They didn't want to cross the bridge. Okay, well, point being here is that money's in short supply. The state's going to be running a deficit next year. And, you know, the idea of raising another 1/2 cent sales tax, all of us need to be aware of this in this room because it hurts all of us. Especially businesses. And so let the barrier island step up, take care of it, and, you know, if you're one of the fat cats on the ocean, I guess you need to pay up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Going once? Yes, ma'am.
Denise Henry, P section.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make a comment for the gentleman that was thrown out a couple weeks ago. I took a drive over to Parati, and not only his house would flood from the elevation of the new home built, but the one behind, the one beside, I don't know which one was his. And now I'm starting to notice that as I drive through Palm Coast, there are a lot of houses that have been built that way. I mean, it was my understanding that even when a fence was put in, you can't have water from your property flow onto other properties, but yet these houses are being built higher. So I emphasize with him, and I think that, code needs to check that. I mean, I think that's very wrong, because the house beside him is definitely 3 feet higher than the other homes. And so then, the water's draining to 3 different properties while that one's staying dry. That's all I have to say.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Next person from, I see you coming, sir. Yes, sir.
Joshua Sadler, B-section. What's your name again, sir? Sorry. Was wanting to take a look at backyard chickens.
State your name again,
Josh
sir.
Sadler.
Pull the
Joshua
mic
Sadler.
up so we can hear you. I'm sorry.
Joshua Sadler.
All right, thank you.
I was hoping we could take a look at backyard chickens. There's been recent rulings. The state and Arizona Homeowners Alliance versus the City of Phoenix and Maine residents versus the town of Augusta that actually recognized that there was constitutional issues in in government limiting people having backyard chickens. And I would like to get a look at this. Right now, you go down the street, they're actually selling live chickens, they're selling the coops, they're selling everything, but then you turn around, you buy it, and they say, we can't have them, but it's something that we need to look at here. And that's it, that's all I gotta say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. What's that? Are you okay, Leslie?
Hi, good late afternoon. Mary Vasilevsky, E-Section.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'm here to speak about the new construction moratorium. And my understanding is that the wastewater treatment plants cannot treat the amount of water that's coming in from the new development, if that is the case. My background's environmental, and I work in green construction, I work in solar farms, and so my background is primarily actually in sustainable development. And one of the things I wanted to bring up to your attention is to reconsider the terms of an all-out moratorium. Wastewater treatment is very important, and we should prioritize fixing those plants. However, with the upcoming tariffs, with the upcoming tariffs and people's livelihoods are going to shift, development may slow down. We don't know that for sure, so it's hard to make a decision when we can't predict the future. However, a lot of people's lives depend on this, and livelihoods. The building industry is one of the largest economic pillars of Palm Coast and Flagler Beach, or Flagler County. But I do think that if we are going to make changes, then it needs to be something on a small scale with the biggest return. So is there something where we can do a temporary pause on new platted developments, but then the developments like the ITT platted lots can still be built on, or something where it's not cold turkey and without pause, because it will cause a lot of anxiety amongst the constituents here, and that's the biggest concern. We don't know what's going to happen economically, and a lot of people are in this industry, so if we can at least iron something out more specific, because you can always make it more strict, but instilling a panic and putting out an all new construction moratorium can definitely drive business out of here. It'll cause stress amongst the constituents that are in this industry. And so my only, plea is to make under considerations. I'm not in y'all's chair, and I do thank you guys for your service, guys and gals. And I'm sure y'all know information more than I do, but it's just something where it's not as blanket as what we are understanding on the side of the builders, where we're, starting to panic. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the dais. Anyone on the council have any follow-ups or comments? Council first, and then I'll come to you, City Manager. Got anything there, Councilman Miller?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to go through real quick. I think the residents that we're talking about, the aquatic center, I think we've all kind of displayed a willingness to try to work towards that. We have some plans. There's contingencies that are required to get that forward. And funding is the challenge, as always. So we want to push that forward. It's, you're weighing a whole bunch of different things within the city, in terms of priority. So I think that's a priority of ours. We recognize that Frida Zamba is an aging facility that has kind of reached the point to where upgrades, things like that, are more cost prohibitive than just building a new facility. So I think we're at an inflection point with the aquatics, and I agree. I think it was mentioned that, memories with children at those pools. Before I moved here in the early 90s, my first memories of Palm Coast are going to Frida Zamba for a children's birthday party when I was like 12 years old or something like that. So I totally agree with that. And then Mr. McDonald, I don't know where you are, but
He's back
there you are.
He's the
So
tallest guy in the
tomorrow
room.
we have a county cities joint meeting, so I invite you to come and provide public commentary there as well, because I think that's important.
That's regarding the sales tax, right? City manager, that's tomorrow?
Yes, the joint cities and county meeting is tomorrow.
And that's the primary topic is the proposed half-cent sales tax?
It's a continuation of the beach management plan that the county administrator has been discussing with the municipalities.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Anything else, Councilman Miller?
I had not heard anything in regards to, spaying in terms of aggressiveness versus non-aggressiveness, so be interested to look at that as well as the 15-minute cities information. So I don't think I got your name. I think it was Rita, maybe?
Mr. Miller, I can relay on more of that. There is a city ordinance that if a dog is deemed dangerous by our hearing officer, then the dog is required to be neutered. I can't talk any more about the pending case, but we do have an ordinance that's a requirement.
Yeah, I think more of the information that I'm interested in is the outcomes of spaying and neutering. But to the gentleman, one, thank you for your service, and two, I think it's extremely important for you to have a service dog if that helps. So try to work with you on that. And then the information about the 15-minute cities, I'll look into that as well. I think that's it.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor? Well, I'm sorry. Councilman Gambaro, you got anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. No, I just wanted to ask the city manager. I know we've been having a discussion with the leadership from the YMCA to come forward and present. When is that scheduled for? I know it's here in the near future.
The YMCA is touring the pool, our aquatic center tomorrow, and we're scheduling on bringing that workshop item to you in April.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor?
I know, so I've been getting a lot of emails on the backyard chickens issue. We did address this, the prior council. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, I can't remember, to be honest with you at this point. But I was in favor of it, with limited regulations, obviously. But I guess what I'm really concerned about is when do we have the workshops on both the work vehicles and the paint colors?
We're targeting those for April 8th.
Both together?
Yes.
I would ask for consensus from this council to bring back the presentations on backyard chickens for that same day. And the reason is, I think they all revolve around one theme of rights that you have in your home that could also affect neighbors. So, I think it's really important that we strike a balance in all of the regulations and that we identify ourselves as a council and not contradict our policymaking. And I think that it's really important that we try to remain consistent as policymakers for the city and as electeds. And so if we can hit those all during the same council meeting to ensure consistency in the policy decisions that we make, I think that that's just best for the community, because then they know where their council sits and what our identity as policymakers is going to be. So I'd ask for consensus from council to look at those presentations again on that same day.
You have mine.
You're good?
Works for me.
All right, you have consensus, Vice Mayor.
Is
Anything
that
else?
possible, I'm sorry, Acting City Manager?
Yes, Mr. DiLorenzo did send you the past presentation. Rather than reinvent the wheel, we will just re-present that information at that workshop.
Perfect,
Line it.
perfect.
We can redline it if we want to change it, to make it more palatable to the residents.
Well, so it was supposed to be a pilot program, but the council, I think,
Yeah, I
voted
think it was-
3-2 to not pass it. So obviously something we can discuss that day.
I remember being here for all those
Yeah.
meetings. So I think it's a bit too prohibited. I think we can look at it. And,
We've got plenty of time, and now it's on the agenda, so there you go.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Is that it, Vice Mayor? You
That's
good?
all I had, yes, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to try and address some of the pool concerns. The pool did reopen, Palm Coast Aquatic Center did reopen. Our hours are seasonally based off usage, so when we were open year-round, we did look and see how many people were coming at which times, and we try and staff accordingly. So we will go 7 days a week, Memorial Day weekend. And then I believe the gentleman who talked about the dog bite case, he left his sweater up here in the chair, just didn't want him to leave without making sure he got it. Mr. Evaristo, okay, all right, it's up here. Just
Your jacket's up here,
Your
sir.
jacket is up here.
In the front seat. Is that it, City Manager?
Yes, sir, I don't have anything further.
Okay, yes, we'll be having that meeting tomorrow with the county, and a lot of people already heard, well, we've already discussed it here on the city council. They gave their presentation as far as the half cent and what they're looking to do. And me and Councilman Miller will be over there tomorrow. What time is that meeting, City Manager?
It's at 5:30.
Okay, so 5:30 tomorrow at the chamber at the,
The Government Services Building in Bunnell.
yep, that's the county commission chamber. Okay. Anything from you, Mr. Duffy? You got anything? He's like, I don't have anything.
Nothing, just happy to be back, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Yes, welcome back. I've already told you that. Is Doug online? He's ready? Can we hear him?
We should, Doug, our IT Doug is going to come make sure we can hear him.
Doug and Doug. Okay, we're going to move into item E, presentations. The first presentation is going to be the Strategic Government Resources, SGR, City Manager Search, semifinalists, ranking, and selection of finalists. Are you there? Are you there, Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, we got you loud and clear, brother. Go right ahead.
Great. Thank you. I know the audio is a little muffled on your end, so apologize. I know we originally were planned to be there in person tonight, but I know that there had been some conversation about the amount of material and the amount of time to everyone to review tonight. So it was thought that we would at least do this virtually. And if we're able to roll and rock and roll tonight, we'll go do that. And if there was a decision to push this back till either later into next week, we would react accordingly. So tonight, the purpose, if I can share a screen, I'll just kind of tee things up and then we can open up for conversation as well. So let me get to share here and kind of walk you through the process. Okay, so does everyone see the screen?
Yes, sir, we're good.
Great. Okay, super. So let me walk you through it. So tonight, the purpose of the discussion is to bring everybody up to speed and have a chance to talk through the material that has been provided to you on the 10 semifinalists that are currently under review for the city manager recruitment process. Hopefully by now, if not, we'll talk through it. We've given you cover letters, resumes, questionnaire responses, video interview links to allow you to view their responses to 4 different questions, and some additional background material on the various candidates for consideration. The hope is that if everyone's had the chance to go through that, our goal tonight would be to talk through that with you to see if there is consensus to move forward with regards to typically most of our clients select somewhere between 3 to 5 finalists that they would invite for an on-site interview process. And then after that, we normally talk about, I want to spend a little time, as I've done in the previous meetings that I've been with you, to outline kind of what's involved in the on-site interview process, to make sure there's clarity on how you want to do it. And we have some logistical questions that we need to get some direction from. And then the process from there is to, we'll proceed with getting those finalists prepared for that. And then we also want to just kind of confirm dates and times and efforts and going forward as well. So that's the purpose of the meeting tonight. Just as we've always said, as candidates are going through this process, we ask that if anyone gets any direct comments or information, if they just refer them back to either Michael or myself, just so we can make sure that all the candidates receive the same information at the same time and nobody's at an advantage or disadvantage in that effort. And then you may remember this slide from previous presentation that I had provided. We talked initially when we were doing the triage, which we now did 2 different triages with you, that we knew a little bit about a variety of candidates based on what they've told us or based upon our experience in knowing them either personally or professionally through other searches. We're at this point of the semifinalists where obviously now you get much more granular information about each candidate's style and background and experience and how they would address some of the challenges and the opportunities that your community and your organization are currently facing as well. So as I say, it's often easier to kind of review the candidates at this stage than sometimes it is at the front end, because now you have a little more information and data about how they all kind of operate and their strengths and what they can bring to the table to assist you in this process. So at the end of this, ultimately, whether it's today or next week, depending on where you land, the hope is that ultimately you will select your finalists that will be preparing for the on-site interviews. And at that point, we continue to do additional work with each of the candidates, and I'll kind of walk you through what those steps involve. But that includes a much more granular detail in terms of criminal history, credit, legal research on their positions, and to find out if there's anything of a concern in that area, driver's license checks, all that type of review, in addition to reviewing academic credentials and any other certifications they may have to ensure that they've got that. We check all the databases for criminal and crimes and things of that nature as well. And then we also were extensively involved in reference checks that I talked about, a 360 review of peers, supervisors, subordinates, colleagues, things of that nature. So we get a holistic review of how these candidates have performed in previous positions that they've held. And then last but certainly not least is a much more detailed, what we call a stage 2 media search, where we actually have personnel with SGR that check the various search engines in addition to the LexisNexis type of material that we've already provided you. It's kind of a high level review at this stage at the semifinalist level. But obviously the finalist levels go through a much more detailed evaluation of their background and material. And you would actually receive a briefing book on each of the candidates, flagging any potential items that might be of concern to you. But as you've noted, we've included questions in the questionnaire, asking each candidate to kind of flag anything that might be potentially of concern in their background to a future employer. So we have a chance for them to provide direct information to you on those items, in addition to anything that might come up in terms of any media search type work as we go deeper to that effort. So we're moving from the semifinalist level, obviously, and the next step would be into the finalist level. So just as a high level, the approach that you asked us when we first met with everyone and developed the position profile brochure, we captured what you were looking for as ideal attributes and ideal background efforts. So just as a review, I think it's helpful to look at that as we're talking about the candidates. You wanted to have someone that had at least a bachelor's degree with a master's preferred. You wanted someone that had experience, looking for at least 8 years of progressively responsible experience, either in city manager's office or managing a municipal department, or potentially a department head in a different type of organization, be it a county, a city, or other organization. A number of you had expressed interest in at least experiencing and having us cast a broad net for trying to find candidates that might bring leadership from the military or the armed services and or base command type experience. And we've got a few folks that kind of fit into that bucket for your consideration that you've selected so far. Then you also said, kind of a catch-all, that you're also interested if you think there's somebody that you applied, that there's enough interest on the commission, the council to review, that you would open that up to say if somebody else might have the background or experience that you're willing to at least consider that. A couple other things that we thought were important based on our conversations with you is the credentialed manager designation from the International City County Management Association. Just as a review, that's a a 360 review process, and a candidate that gets selected has to go through a vetting effort. They ultimately get awarded through that effort to become a credential manager if they kind of checked all the boxes off and demonstrated a commitment for professional development and addressing areas of future professional growth for them. And then on top of that, it's required for them to complete at least 40 hours of continuing education and document that process in order to retain that CM status. And then lastly, because of the challenges you're facing in your community, issues regarding utilities and growth management, board governance, economic development, and recruitment, retention, and succession planning were all flagged as skill sets that you told us and we agreed that were of significant interest in the candidates that would ultimately be considered for this position. And so as you've now noticed through the questionnaire background material, you've had a chance to have these 10 semifinalists, give them background about their style, their experience, their insights, but then in particular, we specifically asked a variety of questions so you could see how they would take their training, experience, and background and how they would approach some of those issues, especially on that last line in this item regarding utilities and growth management and governance, things of that nature as well. So as I say, you get a much better feel for where these candidates are at and the style that they bring to the table, in addition to hearing their responses to video interviews. So you can see, I realize that's one way, but you'll at least get a sense of how they can communicate in a relatively short period of time for each of those responses. So I'll stop there for a second, and because I know there had been some questions about whether you are fully prepared to have this conversation this evening, and so I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor, and for deliberations. We're prepared to kind of provide a real high level without necessarily going through the details of all the candidates that are in the pool. I can bring up those slides that have them if there's references, material that you wanted to kind of get to compare to. But at the end of the day, what we're going to really focus on is, if you're proceeding tonight, is to have a chance to talk through your thoughts and opinions, and then ultimately try to rank candidates so that you can determine who you might be inviting in for the on-site interview process. So I'll stop with that and turn it over for conversation from you and their colleagues, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Doug. Is everyone ready to go? Are you ready to rank and so narrow it down to 3 to 5 candidates for in-person interviews? You ready? Mr. Councilman Gambaro, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Everyone else ready?
So I had asked after that email that I would prefer. So I guess my first question, Doug, is if there was a proposed change of date, right, in the email that you sent earlier, if necessary. And so I'm trying to find it.
I can pull it up, Councilmember, if that helps.
I guess my question is we have a timeline here in the back of this packet. Does pushing that to this date change this timeline in any way?
No, because the way it's scheduled, let me go back to a later slide here. Based on my discussions with your interim manager, and I believe through last Friday, some conversations with the council. We're obviously at this point here on the 11th, but because of scheduling and challenges, and you've got a trip to Tallahassee, as I understand, plus I know you're anxious to interview prospective candidates, become your, to seat Mr. or Councilmember Stevens' vacancy on the seat. At the end of the day, it looked like we were pushing for interviews to occur on April 24th and 25th. And then was a sense that you probably wanted to regroup the first part of the next week with your final deliberation. Sometimes when you interview, 3 or 4 or 5 candidates, you're kind of fried after a couple of busy days, and you just want a chance to kind of to digest and evaluate those things before. So that's a little longer than we would normally have. We need typically, several weeks from the point of selecting semifinalists to getting ready for actual final interviews. But because of scheduling conflicts, the 24th and 25th look like that's going to be the date. So if we needed to push tonight's back, I've suggested that could happen potentially as early as next Thursday or Friday as a special meeting, or if my desire is to keep the process moving as expeditiously as possible, only because some of these candidates are in other searches. And obviously, the longer we delay at the semifinalist level, they're going to debate if they get another offer that they may be selected ahead of you. But the bottom line is, I think the 24th and the 25th are now pretty much set in stone. So if we needed a little more time, we can certainly make that work. I just would encourage expediency to the extent it's possible.
Yeah, so I would kind of defer to my colleagues. I think that you guys are ready to go. I would prefer a little bit more time. I want to be fair to everybody and kind of digest all this information the right way so that I feel like I'm making the right choice here. I would prefer that potentially we could push this, but it's up to you.
Councilman Miller, I really don't think you're going to get anything else out of those videos. Really, if you haven't had time to watch them, you're not going to get much more out of them.
I've watched them. Yeah.
A lot of it's fluff. So, people repeat.
If the consensus is that we move forward, then we move forward.
Well, when are we going to look at the candidates for District 3 City Manager? When will we look at them?
We're having a special workshop on April 1st at 3 p.m.
Okay, so let's see. Yeah, hopefully we'll have a new city council member that'll help in this decision-making process, but I don't think we need to delay anymore. Do you, Vice Mayor?
So I was less than thrilled to receive essentially 3 days to review everything. So I feel you. I feel your concerns. I was up incredibly late last night watching videos, reading materials. I also have a concern about not at least narrowing down the field tonight. I don't want some of these good folks to take positions elsewhere because we haven't continued to make decisions. But I also feel that if you don't think you're equipped to start narrowing that field, then I would be in agreement to push it, maybe 5, 6, 7 days at the most if we absolutely need to.
Yeah, and I'm on board with doing it as quickly as possible past today. I just feel like I need a little bit more time to digest. As long as, whatever the next step is in this process, which looks like the 27th, is not pushed because of that, right? So if we can get this going, a few days down the road where I have some more time, I would appreciate that. I don't want to make the wrong decision here. I think we get one shot at this, and we got to get it right.
I agree with you. I mean, I think, and I know I hate to schedule something from the dais, but I don't know what everybody's Friday afternoon looks like, but if maybe we can look at Friday afternoon, would that give you enough time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would it be, is that on the 20, so the windows that I've got, I know we looked at some options. I've got some other clients that I've already committed for since we've kind of pushed things around a little bit. I've been committed to those folks. I've got the afternoon of the 20th. I've got a workshop I'm doing that I'm committed that'll get me completed. I should be available by 1:30 on the 20th. And then on the 21st, I've generally got between 8 o'clock and 1 o'clock available if any of those could work. If not, we could potentially, although I don't want to push it too far, potentially I've got the 24th, and then maybe, I think you've got a meeting on the 25th, but I don't know if that's a morning or an afternoon. I have an afternoon commitment with another search where I'm doing selecting the same meeting we've got tonight with another client on the 25th in the afternoon.
City Manager, what do we have?
I would say the 21st is too far.
Me too.
City Manager, what do we have on the schedule for the business meeting on the 18th?
Hey team, real quick. I'm traveling 19th through 21st. I'll be up in DC, so those dates don't work for me.
How do you feel about, have you had enough time, Councilman Gambaro, to review the packets?
I can give my thoughts, but I also want to defer, take into consideration Councilman Miller and the Vice Mayor's. I want to make sure they've got time to fully go through everything and feel comfortable moving forward, so we as a team can make this decision.
Here's my thing. I'm comfortable going forward, but I think this type of decision is one that we should try to get consensus on if possible. So to the extent all of these candidates need to be fairly fleshed out by everybody, I think we need to give that opportunity. Now, we may be able to collectively as a group tonight agree certain people are not the right fit, but I still think if there's hey, I still want to look into this person a little bit more, if there's still that feeling for many of us and we haven't had time to look into them enough, that we keep them as part of the process.
And I guess my question is the next, if we were to push the ranking, really it's just a ranking process, right?
Yeah, we're going to rank.
Not to exclude you, Doug, but, we're just ranking them, right? So do we need the consultant for that?
This is kind of, well, two things. Let me preface it. Number one, you may recall I said that although you're not making a final selection of who you're going to hire, at this point you're asking to say, okay, these 3 or 4 or 5 folks we want to bring in, and they potentially, any one of them could become your next city manager. So this is a kind of a critical step. I'm not as concerned at the semifinalist level because you've got some slippage there and you're not making a final decision, but at this point you're about to ask candidates to really step up and be prepared to come in for an interview. So it is a pretty significant milestone date. You got kind of one shot at how many you want to bring in and where you may be as a group. So I really do encourage you that if you're not fully prepared to make that decision, that you just take a couple more days to make that work. I'm sure we can find a date and a time that works, that doesn't upset the apple cart and still keeps things moving. But it is pretty critical that you make the decision because these candidates are going to have to make a decision about, I'm definitely ready to get ready for preparations for interviews, and there's a lot more work they need to do.
Councilman Miller, we're going to do exactly what we did before, rack and stack them. Everybody that falls below that 5 line are going to be eliminated.
I understand the process.
Okay.
I'm more trying to get to the point of, if we can get this scheduled quickly.
What about Saturday? On Councilman Gambaro's birthday. Can we do it on Councilman Gambaro's birthday on Saturday?
Beware the Ides of March.
All right. You think, City Manager, what you got? When do you think we can plug it in to give everybody a few more days?
Mr. Mayor, so we still got to follow the 7 days due notice for this.
So we have to do 7 days from this date. Is that the law?
That is the recommendation
All
of it.
dog?
That's a recommendation of the Attorney General opinion.
Recommendation. So
that would leave anything this week out, and we could look at next week.
You're looking at, today's 11th, so I would say the 18th.
And as you see, ladies and gentlemen, that's why government doesn't operate quickly, right? Because we have these restrictions.
I have a proposal. I'm sorry, you're traveling, right, Charlie? I'm sorry.
Well, can we do a special workshop on the 18th?
But Charlie's
I thought he said he was traveling the 19th through the 20th.
Yeah, I'm available the 18th.
Okay,
Right before the business meeting? Is that?
Oh, no, business.
I hate to be the wrinkle in this, but the 18th, I'm committed. I've got profile interviews in another community already committed on the 17th and the 18th. So,
how about this, Doug? Doug, what if we go through? You run through the slate tonight, okay? And then, if there's anyone that we're going to immediately disqualify or eliminate because of something you've seen or I've seen, and then those people will move on to the one on Tuesday. Does that sound good? We can have them go through this. We can rack and stack them on Tuesday by ourselves. We don't need Doug for that.
Yeah, that was kind of my point before, is that all we're doing is plugging in numbers to a spreadsheet, right? So we could probably do that same process and let Doug know, as long as Doug's okay with that and he doesn't think that he's providing specific information that would be different than tonight.
So the challenge we've got is that, and this may be, as you know, as we go through a process of ranking, based on experience before, several of you may have ranked a candidate 1 and others may rank a candidate 3. And there may be a majority that want to bring a candidate in, which I respect, but we probably have to have a conversation about if there are 1 or more candidates that maybe have a ranking of 3. I would need to have a really candid conversation with you to make sure that for the candidates' benefit, that they would understand that if they come in, if you're bringing in 3 or 4 or 5, whatever number you bring in, that they all have an equal chance and they have the ability to convince you to be, your next manager. But if there's a hard no on any one of those efforts, candidates may likely say, thanks, but no thanks, I don't want to participate. So the challenge I've got with just, recognizing we do this all over the country, that if you just rank candidates and that process comes through and we've got folks that are uncertain, we may not have all the candidates that you think. And that's something we probably need to just talk through. So I'm a little reluctant to just have you rank them in my absence without knowing how those scores shake out and having a conversation amongst all of you about how you feel about these folks. I'm just trying to give you insight from, not our first rodeo. We understand kind of what this process looks and feels like from both your side as well as the candidate side.
I get it, Doug. So is Friday out for everyone?
I can do late Friday afternoon. I've got something else on my calendar. But
What,
This
I don't
Friday?
think that meets your notice.
Oh, it's not,
Oh, it
it's
doesn't
not
meet
being
the
the notice. My God, legal.
Does Friday the 21st, sometime between 8 and 1 o'clock work?
Councilman
Can
Gambaro
that
is
work?
traveling.
Councilman Gambaro is traveling.
I've got meetings all day Friday in DC.
I mean, at this point, it seems like it's going to be a challenge to get this scheduled, so I'm okay with going forward.
The only other option, what does Monday the 24th look like? I hate to do this at live, trying to schedule a meeting, but I knew that.
We're en route to Tallahassee, aren't we?
Yeah, that's the legislative action day.
Let's just move forward, Mr. Mayor. I think we're facing challenges of.
I think we've all had time to review the resumes, and if we go through.
I've reviewed them. I don't want to say that it's not like I haven't reviewed them. It's that I just wanted to go through them more and more to make sure. So
yeah,
I think that who I think is the best is in fact that person in my mind. So.
I think, Councilman, if you can just vocalize, if you feel like you haven't given somebody a fair shot, you want to look further into them. I mean, let's continue to consider that person rather than, just to try to be malleable, as far as what you've had time to look at, and make sure that's a consideration as we're doing this.
Yeah, we're in a time crunch here. Okay, are you good with that, Councilman Gambaro? We're gonna rack and stack them tonight.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna rack and stack them. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay, all right. So I recognizing you've got other things on the agenda tonight, I'm more than glad if you wanted to just provide an overview. I've got the slides that provide each of the candidates' overview. We don't necessarily need to do that since you've reviewed that, but if there's a need, I can bring them up. But the bottom line would be, basically, if you would like to kind of talk through what we typically ask our boards to do is you can either do a raw ranking as we've done in the past and then see where things shake out and then talk through those candidates. As I say, oftentimes you'll have several that everybody likes, several that there just isn't enough support to proceed with. And oftentimes those folks kind of in the middle is where we end up talking through it and maybe some scores get changed based on your feedback. So in the interest of time, if you're comfortable, we could bring up the triage ranking form and just work through the candidates and see where we stand. And then talk through them after that, once we kind of get a sense of where you collectively are at with regards to the semifinalists.
Okay, let's do this first, if you don't mind, Doug. Does anyone on the council see everything that you've seen, the news articles that popped up for the candidates that we've seen, that you've been able to look at? Does anyone see anything that stands out and somebody that would be eliminated off the bat? And if so, what are the reasons?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr.
So I've got a couple concerns on a few people, and this is just my perspective. We're in the process of, looking to hire an executive for our city. And, we've got folks that have great experience, but they're not executives, right? And to this gentleman who I think Lee Uresti.
Yes.
He's a retired warrant officer in the GS civilian. But to me, warrant officer doesn't equal executive, it equals technician. Just my perspective. I know you know him better than I do. Sonia Alves Vivieros, I have concerns. There was an ethics complaint about her hiring her husband's company for a fireworks 4th of July issue there while she was the city manager. Also, She also applied to be the city manager in Fernandina Beach and then withdrew. She applied to be our city manager, then withdrew, and now she applied again. So in my estimation, somebody that flip-flops all the time is not a leader. And so, and then the others are, we've got some good candidates as well, but to me they're not executive. The only other executives that jump out at me are one, Lee Smith, who has 33 total years as a county manager, of terms from 9 years, 11 years, and 13 years. We also have Paul Trombino, who served as the Director of Transportation for the state of Iowa, and also worked 17 years in the transportation department at the state level in Wisconsin. But he was a state level director. I mean, think about our Department of Transportation that we're trying to get involved to help us with our roads. Okay, and then he was appointed by Governor Kim Reynolds. He was nominated by President Trump to serve on the Federal Highway Administration, and his nomination went out of committee, but it was delayed by Mitch McConnell because they were trying to get more judicial nominees through. So this guy's good enough for the President of the United States to nominate him. He ran an entire department for a whole state in transportation, which is, I think, an area that we it's a good quality to have. And he's got 17 years experience of it in Wisconsin. And then I'll also highlight, a director of public works. So Richard Ho, not only is he a retired military colonel, so colonel and above to me equals executive, but he's got the DPW background and experience that I think would suit us well for going forward with our capital improvement projects that we're discussing. So to me, all three of those are ones, everybody else is a three.
All right, that's not the way we're going to do it. We're going to go by them individually, but stand by. Anyone else? You got any major issues with any of them, Vice Mayor?
Anything that's automatically disqualifying, no. I definitely think there's a handful that are underqualified just for the position in general. I would agree with Councilman Gambaro regarding Mr. Lee Uresti. I appreciate his service, but I don't think this is a position for him. And I have that feeling about some other candidates, but anything glaring that really disqualifies any of these individuals, I would have to say no.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Councilman Miller?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So to me, I agree with some of the things already said. So I think, those things will get kind of shaken out with the rankings in terms of that. But I have nothing that's an immediate disqualifier.
Well, okay. For me, Councilman Gambaro, I'd beg to differ with you on Lee Uresti and you, Vice Mayor. You brought up Richard Ho. Most of his experience has been in the military. Mr. Uresti's actually ran a community. I know for a fact because I worked for him, so I wouldn't eliminate him for that. Even if he was a warrant officer, he served the community. He had all those sub-units, fire, rescue, hospital, golf course, all those things he has in his resume. Plus he's managed budgets up to like $1.8 billion in different things. So that's some of the things I look for is number of people you've supervised and managed, budgets, and getting things done. I would not eliminate Mr. Uresti just because he was a warrant officer and served in the Navy. There's a few other ones that I've seen some things, but once we rack and stack them, my rack and stack will illustrate what I think of them. So, anything else, Vice Mayor?
Yeah, if I could, just before we get into racking and stacking, I think it's really important that we recognize a few things that we absolutely need in a city manager, and that's one, a in-depth and intimate knowledge of government accounting, because it is a completely different type of accounting than any of us have ever dealt with. You have to know not only the difference of, between the different accounts, between the different funds, what comes into each fund and how each one of those can be expended, but also you have to have enough of a knowledge to be creative. So in other words, you have to understand what can we actually use impact fees for? How can we actually lessen a budget on one side and maybe have to increase a budget on another? I mean, we saw in one of our funds, I think it was our building fund, where we were actually at one point collecting too much in fees, had to stop collecting on fees, and then for whatever reason didn't go back to collecting those fees, and then we're under collecting fees. So we really need somebody who has an intimate understanding of that government accounting. So I bring that up because while I can appreciate the incredible traits that come with somebody who has served this country in really any capacity, but particularly as a first responder or somebody in the military, you all are great examples of that. What experience did that give you and prepare you for government accounting? I am fairly certain everybody on this board, myself included, was drinking from a fire hose when they took this job, because you have to learn that, and you have to learn it quick. We don't have time for a city manager to be on a learning curve. We don't have that luxury. So I think that that's just something very important to keep in mind. With regards to some of these other folks, I just think they're over their head on this job. Some of them have had some really great accomplishments in the jobs that they've had, and I certainly commend, we saw in the videos, they mentioned some of their proudest accomplishments. And if I were them, I'd be very proud of some of their accomplishments too. But what I'm looking for is, how does that translate to somebody who's going to run a $500 million budget, one of the largest staffs, if not the largest staff they've ever had to oversee, and then somebody who's also had the ability to run capital projects over a long period of time. So it's not just, the day-to-day being in those silos, but really overlooking everything, and then putting the right people in place so that they're not in the weeds on everything. Making sure that you've got the proper leaders at the helm of each of these different departments and managing each of these funds and not getting in the weeds on all of these little things. So to your point, you can't be a tactician. You have to be an executive. As we kind of look at all of these candidates, I just really encourage all of my colleagues to keep that in mind, because while we can certainly respect and honor a lot of the things that many of these people have done, and I appreciate everybody's names that we're looking at for going out on this limb and for being interested in this job, really we have to make sure that they have all the traits that are going to lead our city to success.
Anything else, Councilman Gambaro?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Miller, you got anything?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, Doug, are you still with us, brother?
Yes, I am in the process. So I appreciate the comments in the area. I want to just kind of address, I know Councilmember Gambaro and I had a conversation as well. I know there was a comment about Sonia's background. My recollection, Councilmember, was that was a engineering contract. I thought I heard you say something about fireworks, and that her husband was a inspector. But as we discussed, just to set the record, that was done several years ago. There were some complaints raised. There was nothing that came out of that. And the city attorney had apparently indicated that she had recused herself and addressed the potential conflict of interest and recused herself from the decision. So I just wanted to, recognizing that's a public forum, to say that's what we saw in the material that came forward. But at some point, everyone has to make a decision about where your level of comfort with regards to any of the media exposure with any of your candidates are before you. So with that, that's all I had. I'm more glad to just work through it as we've done in the past. I think I'm sharing the screen if you want to go through, and let's see where you shake out, and then we can talk through the process from there.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Doug, I can't see the screen. Stand by. Okay, I've got it now. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Super. Thank you, Charlie.
All right, so they keep it rolling as we did the rotation. If you don't mind, Vice Mayor, we'll start with you, then Councilman Miller, Gambaro, and then myself. Is that good? Everybody good with that?
I'm sorry. What's the order again, Mayor? It's really muffled. It's hard for me to hear.
It's going to be Vice Mayor, Councilman Miller, Gambaro, and then myself.
Miller, Gambaro, and then yourself. Gotcha, okay. Thank you, appreciate that. Okay, bear with me, and as I'm putting it up, if I mishear your number, please correct me, we'll go from there.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Okay, we'll just take this, these are listed in the alphabetical order, the same order that you saw them in the book, so nothing, nothing perceived there. It's just we'll shake out where the numbers come out. Vice Mayor? First candidate is Anna Gibson.
3.
I'm sorry, 2?
3.
3, gotcha, okay.
I'm
3.
Councilman Gambaro, stop jumping ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, was that you, Charlie Gambaro?
He said,
Okay, I thought I was second. Okay, yeah, 3. I'll go last. 3.
Okay, 3.
You're at their tie, Miller, Councilman Miller, and I'm a 3 on that one too.
I'm sorry, a 3, Mayor?
3, yes, sir.
Okay, gotcha, all right. All right, next candidate is Jay Wolverding, excuse me.
3.
Vice Mayor?
3.
3.
He was the county administrator out in, was an auditor, treasurer, and a county administrator out in Arizona.
Vice Mayor said 3.
Once again, I'm sorry.
3.
3?
3.
3, gotcha, okay. Sorry, as I said, it's really muffled, bear with us.
Yeah, Doug, can you see us?
Yes, I can see you, yes, but it's a ways away, so I
Okay.
may not be able to see a number if you put it up.
That's not going to help. Okay.
Okay,
Repeated it to Doug.
next one, Councilmember Miller?
2, please.
2? Oops, I'm sorry, 2, okay. Councilmember Gambaro?
3.
3. And Mayor?
Norris is 3. 3.
3, okay. Okay, next one is Kara Boyles. She was the engineer from Indiana.
3.
2?
3.
3, thank you. All right, so once again, bear with us, okay?
I'm a 3, Doug.
3, okay.
Here's me.
3.
3. Mayor?
2.
2, okay. All right.
I thought you guys would do better.
Okay.
I thought she was very impressive.
The Uresti?
3.
Vice Mayor, 3.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, it was really hard to hear you.
3.
3.
3, okay, thank you.
I'm a 3 as well. 3.
3?
3.
3? Mayor?
1.
1, okay. All right. Michael Reese. Michael Reese was a previous manager in a smaller community, but his more significant role was chief of staff in the city of Columbus.
1.
1. Mr. Miller?
2.
2. Mr. Gambaro?
3. 3. Yep.
Okay.
3
and
for
Mayor?
3 for me as well. 3.
Okay. All right. Paul Trombino. I know Commissioner Gambaro had kind of given the highlight. Currently managing a public works operation out in Colorado, but extensive background in Wisconsin and Iowa in transportation and other state level offices.
2.
2. Okay. Mr. Miller?
1.
Gambaro?
1.
Mr. Mayor?
3.
Okay. Next one is Richard Howe, also a military background, but is managing a public works operation right now.
2.
2. Mr. Miller?
2, please.
I'm sorry, 2?
2.
2, gotcha, okay. Mr. Gambaro?
1.
1. And Mayor?
3.
Okay, Scott Bloth. Variety of governmental positions in logistics and operations as well.
3.
3.
3, that was a 3, okay. Mr. Miller?
3.
3. Mr. Gambaro?
3.
Mr. Mr. Mayor?
2.
Okay. All right. Next is Sonia Alves Vivaderos, administrator of a large community up in New Jersey as a manager, comparable size community.
1.
1. Mr. Miller?
1.
I'm sorry, was that a 1?
1.
Okay. Mr. Gambaro?
3.
And Mr. Mayor?
3.
Okay. Last candidate, William, or he goes by Lee Smith, most recently in Chatham County, but a couple other county administrator positions as well. And Chatham County's up in Georgia. So, Vice Mayor?
1.
1.
1 as well.
1 also. Okay. Mr. Gambaro?
1.
1. And Mr. Norris?
1.
1. Okay. All right, so let's do this. Okay. 2, 3, 4. Your cutoff at this point would be here if you selected 5 candidates based on your numbers. Is that now? Let's talk through this. You've got a couple 3s here. I'm just gonna highlight some numbers here just so we can talk through things here. Let's do the fonts there. We got a couple 3s here. Okay, so the question is, well, obviously there's pretty strong comfort with regards to Mr. Smith and Mr. Trombino, correct? So we can kind of assume that those two are proceeding. My question at this point is you've got some 1s and 2s, but you got a couple 3s in this category as well. I'm certainly comfortable recommending you go with 5, but my question to those of you that had rated 3s in these buckets with these candidates, the candidates are likely to ask me to say, listen, I don't want to participate unless I've got a fair shot. I mean, I realize that right now you're making a decision based on what we've got, but you haven't had a chance to meet me in person, haven't gone through the process, be engaged in that whole effort. Are those numbers, I would ask you respectfully, if you're comfortable that at the end of the day, I respect that they may be a 3 now, but are you comfortable that you could be convinced if ultimately one of those people that have 3s ultimately appears to be the strongest candidate and your colleagues are ready to proceed? I'm not saying you have to make a vote for them. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable that they at least have a fair shot as part of the interview process.
Mr. Mayor, again, for me on Sonia, I mean, her flip-flopping back and forth to me is just something that is not a hallmark of a leader. And so I feel very comfortable with my 3 on her.
Yeah, I wasn't, nothing stood out that jumped out at me, and I looked at some of the articles and stuff, so.
So I'll speak up for Ms. Viveros because I had ranked her number 1 from the beginning, and during her interview, some things that jumped out at me, and in reading about her experience, she's very cognizant and mindful of smart growth. I think it's really important. Some of the things that she talked about were government transparency, being very communicative, and obviously those are important things. One of her greatest accomplishments, she said, was reforming an animal shelter that was in severe disarray, obviously pertinent to some of the challenges that we have right now. She has a Portuguese background and speaks both Portuguese and Spanish. We obviously have a very large Portuguese community here. And she's a working mom with small-age children. So I think that's really important as we're growing and we're trying to bring in working families with children. So, I think that she would be a good fit. Her resume speaks to experience that she has with large budgets and large staff. And so, I think that she fits the mold for what we're looking for. That said, I do want this to be a unanimous decision. So knowing those things, if you, Mayor, and you, Councilman Gambaro, are not confident that you could have an in-person interview with her, talk to her about her experience, and actually have that one-on-one and be persuaded, then I don't think there's any point in moving forward with her.
Yeah. A lot of it with me too, as far as the candidates I looked at, and I had all mine racked and stacked before I came in here. I didn't change one single thing on there. They stayed the same. Is that up and moving someone across the country or long distances. That's why a few of those were eliminated for me. And so that's one thing that, I hate to move someone because what happened to the Miss Reese, you move them halfway across the country and then turn around and don't even make probationary period. I'm very leery of that. And so like even Scott is local. Anna's local, Lee is local, everyone else is an outsider. Mr. Lee Smith, he was the most impressive on the video I've seen, and his resume was very impressive because he lives in a coastal town. So I was very impressed with him. He was very poised. He's very confident in his videos. But, I don't think someone that's applied, withdrawn, so I would eliminate that one too. I'd move Mr. Uresti and Mr. Scott Peeliff up higher, but you guys have racked and stacked the way you wanted, and I've racked and stacked the way I wanted to. So do you guys want to eliminate that one from the ranking?
I would say if we're going to eliminate, we don't need to be adding more. I mean, let's narrow down the field appropriately if we can.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a point at which you just have to,
Yeah.
have a cut line there. To the point of the conversation, I think I'm more than willing to be convinced by someone in person. I think that's when you're actually gonna kind of get the measure of a real person as face to face. Anybody, and not to take away from their videos, but anyone can create a video where they look good, right? But when you ask them and press them on real questions that face our community, that's going to be when they can stand up to that scrutiny and be able to answer those questions for us, and they have the opportunity to impress us. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for. And so going into it, I'm not going to be eliminating anybody because of that, because I didn't rank them a certain way coming in. I think it's important to keep an open mind.
Yeah, I'm very open, and I want the most competent and strong leader to get this job. And so if you guys want, we can eliminate that one. That moves Lee up, and we'll go with those 5. That's the 5 I would go with as far as.
I don't think we should add lead in. I mean, we have 3 threes for me,
Right.
Mr. Uresti, and I understand, Mayor, that you're a big advocate of his, but again, if we're looking at the 3s here and we're talking about really being convinced, I mean, to be quite honest with you, I just think he's underqualified for
Well,
this job.
I'm considering what Mr. Miller said as far as, and I'll admit Lee's interview questions were short, and I told him that personally, that it's a bit short. He didn't go into more specificity on things that he's done in his role as a camp director over in Okinawa. But if that's the way, if you don't want to move them forward, that's fine if we have consensus on that.
I think the question is whether we're doing 4 or 5, not whether we're moving someone up. Because if we're just
I'd say we
eliminating
need
the
to go
5th
with
person.
5 people. That's the only reason I was moving him up, because he's the next in the chute.
Well, but that's not fair. I mean, if we're going to say, okay, objectively, these are the top 5 and let's just move with them, then let's do that. We racked them and stacked them. This is where the chips fell. I mean, because now you have the ability to manipulate the list, right? Now we have the ability to say, oh, well, let's get rid of Sonia and Michael because we want Lee and Jerome in. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing,
No.
but this is the way it shook out. So to Councilman Miller's point, I mean, are we talking about just eliminating Miss Sonia Viveros because you all don't feel you can be convinced, so we'll go with 4? Or are we going to keep her in and give her a shot in person?
No, that's fine. We can eliminate that one. Are you good with that, Councilman Gambaro? Going with those? One question.
Going with 4?
Yeah, one question would be, are the candidates that move forward really committed to moving to Florida? Because I don't know, Mr. Smith he's right up in North Carolina. Where is Paul located?
Paul is out in Colorado, I believe, as I recall.
That's a different lifestyle, Colorado and Florida. Richard, where is he?
I believe he's also in Colorado. Let me grab
Other
my,
one that's in
make sure I'm
Colorado.
speaking accurately here. Oh, here, let me go back to another.
Well, that's just something that really you need to reach out to all of them if we go with those, Doug, and make sure that they're
Yeah.
committed. It's one thing to apply, it's another thing to pick up and move. So if you want to go with that 4, I have no problem with it.
So Mr. Huff is in Wisconsin, Director of Public Works and County Highway Commissioner in Wisconsin, and Mr. Turbino is in Greeley, Colorado.
Yeah, that's
My
big. That's
recollection,
big
yeah.
move.
I would advocate that we bring those 5 in, and then if you have that question for Sonia,
Yeah,
ask Sonia that question. And if she doesn't convince you, then you can eliminate her at that point. Mr. Mayor,
All
Councilman
right, so we're
Gabbaro.
not, you guys are now changed. You don't want to eliminate her. You want to just stay with that 5.
I never wanted to.
Well, I mean, we ranked her 4 for a reason, so.
Sorry. You were advocating for her, so,
I mean, we both ranked her as a 1, so.
okay.
We're both advocating.
I mean, I have to admit, there obviously is some disparity here in terms of where you're at. And so, my sense is that some of this stuff may get softened when you get a chance to meet them, and you're going to either fall in love with the candidate or not like the candidate. But, it's interesting that we have 3s and 1s in the same category, but that's, it's clear, as I said, that's where a lot of the conversation is likely to occur. You've also got 2 3s with Michael Reese, and I think he's also, I think both the candidates are qualified. At the end of the day, they've got to be a fit for you. Both Sonia and Michael, I think, have the background and skill set to manage an organization of your size and complexities. But at the end of the day, it's your decision to say, I want to give them a fair shot to evaluate them.
Yeah.
So I'm totally comfortable with 5. But I just want to be able to make sure that the candidates feel comfortable as well, that if they're going to participate in this process, that they have the ability to give it, the college try, and that you're willing to at least listen. And maybe there's rationale and information that would address your, abate some of your concerns that you might have at this stage of the process. That's all I'm asking, to make sure you're comfortable with.
Yeah, no worries. Maybe, I poured over all the resumes, and I may have had more time than everyone else.
So is that, as I said, once again, it's kind of hard for Michael and I to hear, but does it sound like we're at 5, or does it sound like we're at 4, or what? I need some direction.
No, we're good with those. We're good with those top 5s. Consensus, we're good with those? You good, Councilman Gambaro?
Yeah, listen, I'll talk to anybody, right? But, Sonia's going to have to overcome my objections, without a doubt. And she needs to know that up front.
Okay, that's fair. I appreciate that, and I think she would appreciate that as well. And if she's comfortable that she has a story to tell you that may convince you, that's all I'm asking for at this stage of the game. Not making a final decision. So okay, all right. So with that in mind, then we're going to go with these 5 as the finalists. I will certainly notify them, and then we'll release the balance of the candidates so we can kind of continue this process. So let me go back to the next piece here in terms of kind of the next steps that I want to do.
Doug.
Yes.
Pull the spreadsheet back up again, please.
Sure. Share it again.
Real
Is that showing or not? I'm not sure when I moved it.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, got it. Okay. It should be now.
There you go. Oh, maybe. Okay, I just want to point out, look between the vice mayor and Councilman Gambaro. Those all 3s at the bottom. So don't think I'm lopsided and I'm trying to pull for my buddy, because I'm not. I just know that Lee's a very qualified leader that's led a city before. So just don't think I'm trying to push someone into office. So just to illustrate. All right, Doug, we're good with that.
Okay, all right. Okay. So let me go back to.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're gonna have to open this up for public comment, Doug. Can you stand by for a minute? He can't hear me.
Okay. All right. So we're here, and now you've got your 5 candidates that have been selected as finalists. So the next step we'll do is we have them complete a variety of information on backgrounds and reference checks, and we start the stage 2 media searches that I spoke of earlier.
Tell him to shut up. Tell him to shut up for it.
I'm sorry. Are you good?
You got speaking to the mic. We tell him, Doug, we have to open it up for public comment. We're going to open up the public comment for them to make comment on this.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, I was going to say, we still have some other work to do, but that's fine. I'll stand by. Okay.
All right, we're going to open this up for public comment. Anybody have any discussion or, was the public allowed access to these other than what was printed in the papers?
No, this wasn't, the questionnaires and videos were only sent to you, City Council.
So the only thing that the public has had is what Pierre published in his article. Brian, did you publish anything on them? So it's all just Pierre's initial publication. Okay, no one's coming forward for public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the dais. Okay, now Doug can continue.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. All right, so just want to kind of, I told you every time I meet with you, I'm going to tell you about what's coming next. So as I say, these candidates will be asked to complete their background. We'll do background checks, reference checks, stage 2 media searches. Our finalists in our searches, we typically ask them to complete a written assessment, which is what we call our first year game plan. And so they will, in a written document of no greater than 5 pages, that will outline how they will approach the position if selected as your manager in the first 30, 60, 90, 180 days and kind of the balance of the year. And I know you may think that may all be the same. I will tell you they will all present that information differently, and that'll give you some normative insights about how they get their heart, their head, and their soul around the position. One of the questions that I have, some of our organizations like to use DISC, which is a personality assessment. It's recognized, it's standardized. A lot of people are familiar with it. That's an optional if you want to do that. We would need to know that so that the candidates could complete that. They get their copy, and then you would get a copy of each of the discs for each of the candidates. And then you would get a summary so that you could kind of compare them to each other. And so that's at some of our communities, they'd like to see the candidates they're interviewing, do they present themselves as exactly as their personality type would necessarily convey. And then typically for a position of this nature, we often have candidates for city manager do a very short PowerPoint as part of the interview process with you at the public interview stage, which would be the second day of the interview. And the reason we say that is that the nature of the city manager role requires a candidate to be able to convey in a relatively short period of time concise information in a meaningful way. And so we use it like a TED Talk. We say that the presentation can be no longer than 10 minutes. We don't time it and gong them if they go longer, but if they go longer, I'll keep track of what that is, and we'll know at the end of the day whether, they finished the assignment on time and covered all the bases and how that presentation went, or if they went long. That presentation can be about their first year game plan. It could be about challenges and opportunities that they foresee in the position. We can come up with a topic, and it's really, the topic is not as important to me as the ability to deliver the message in a short period of time. So that's something we always encourage. We think a position of the manager has to be able to be a good public presenter. So that's something we would encourage you to consider. So let me stop there for a sec before we talk about the components. Is there a desire for DISC assessments and potentially a PowerPoint presentation as part of the interview process?
I think the PowerPoint presentation would be good. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a public presentation and evaluate communication methods and things like that. I'm not so big on the Myers-Briggs stuff.
Okay.
Really? Come on, man, you gotta love Myers-Briggs.
I agree with
I think
Councilman
those
Miller.
yeah, I think those can be manipulated, but I do agree. I would like to see the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, to see communication and messaging.
I also think, we don't have to have Briars meetings, whatever. The assessment presentation, that'd be great to see how they can present any subject matter. That's fine.
Okay, all right. So we won't do the DISC, and we'll incorporate the PowerPoint.
Councilman Gambaro, any comment?
Yes.
Roger, that works. Thanks.
Okay, gotcha from there. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the components of the interview process. Our efforts are typically, for a position like this, there's a lot of touch points associated with the position of a manager. So normally we would have the candidates be involved in community tours. So someone with your staff would take each candidate out and show them some of your projects and initiatives and facilities and things of that nature to get a feel for it. We like to be that in a one-on-one session rather than in a group tour, but we can work with your staff if push comes to shove. We just think there's more dialogue and discussion that occurs in a one-on-one versus putting everybody in a van and driving them around and talking through it as well. We always encourage some components, one of which is whoever comes into this organization is going to have to navigate three buckets, if you will. One is the existing organization, so we like to have the direct reports be involved in an interview process. They're not going to be making a selection, they're not going to be ranking the candidates, but I'll sit in those processes and get a chance to see how the candidates are responding to the staff and how the staff's responding to the candidates. That's also very critical for your candidates because they're going to inherit your staff and they're checking you out as much as you're checking them out. And so they want to know what that team looks like and what that feels like to them because they're trying to assess if this is the right spot for them should they be offered the position. Because of the nature of our operations here in Florida, we have two touch points directly with the commissioner or the council members. One is we always do one-on-ones. We typically do a rotating chair of 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it takes. We'll figure out the schedule once we know for sure how many candidates are going to be participating. And we just play musical chairs and give you a chance to have a one-on-one session. And you can ask those questions that you feel are critical that you may not necessarily want to ask in public, but you want to get a chance to have a one-on-one conversation, and that can be done in closed-door sessions. We typically encourage for a community, and we've done this when we've worked with you before, but all of our public searches for city managers normally at a minimum have a public meet and greet where you schedule on the evening of the first night that you would invite your boards and commissions and your stakeholders and you know your public as a whole to come in and meet and mingle the candidates. So normally when that happens, the mayor kind of welcomes everybody. We'll work with your staff to develop a handout that'll have their pictures and bios on it. And we'll have them all just kind of briefly do an introduction, and then they all kind of go off into a corner of the room, and the crowd will turn around and work with them. And we encourage you as elected officials to be present in that meeting so that your constituents and contacts and stakeholders can reach out and talk to you about their impressions of the candidates. Many times for an organization of your size, we often will hold an internal or a staff meet and greet. That can either be done on sometime during day one, or in many cases, we put it at the beginning of day two before things really get started on your interview efforts. So we need to kind of get a feel if that's something you'd like to do, and if so, we'll work with your staff to coordinate it. And then the second piece of that is conversation with, as you know, in Florida, as you meet, just as you are tonight, when you're doing legislative issues that would not be a one-on-one conversation, that interview has to be done in public. And so that would be a process whereby you would, we normally schedule 90 minutes for that public session. What that gives you is about 60 minutes for a traditional Q&A, 10 minutes for the PowerPoint presentation I spoke of, and then it just seems to give enough time for good dialogue back and forth between you as a board and the candidates. Whether you take all 90 minutes, it all remains to be seen. But we found an hour, most of our clients say it's too short and 2 hours is too long, so 90 minutes is just kind of the right spot for that. And then I've set up as deliberations, but I know in talking with your city manager, and what we did the last time we were involved with Palm Coast, but many of our communities want to take the time to kind of just process all the information and not feel like they make a decision that night. We encourage you to make that decision as quickly as possible because, once again, candidates are in other searches. And I have had circumstances where we've lost a candidate because they've interviewed and they didn't make a decision soon. And 3 days later, they made a decision and the candidate had another offer. So I encourage that to happen. And talking with Lauren, we talked about that special meeting occurring potentially on the 28th or the 29th, which would be basically give you the weekend to think through it. And then we would negotiate, we'd help you work through that process and work with your legal counsel and probably a representative of the council to put together a formal employment agreement, work through the terms and conditions that would come back to you at a subsequent meeting where you would have that as a public document for review and consideration and approval. So that's kind of the steps that are involved. I've talked about the finalists on day one. Let's talk a little bit about the preparations, but let's talk about the day one components. community tours, staff sessions, council one-on-ones, public meet and greet, and an internal meet and greet either on day 1 or day 2. Are you comfortable with those components, or any questions you might have or thoughts about what we're suggesting?
Any questions? No, we're good. Question for city manager. Is this we can't do it any sooner than this? This is we're at the first part of March.
Right.
And this is at the end of April. When do we start the budget process?
Well, we start getting into the nitty-gritty in April, at the end of April, and then we are really coming back to you with more refined in June and July and August.
We can't compress this and try to do, because I would prefer sooner than later.
I understand, sir. I tried to work through all of this with you on Friday whenever Mr. Thomas's original schedule is in your agenda packet, right? So the April 1st, you're trying to do your appointment. Mr. Thomas is not available the week of April 8th. The following week of that, I don't believe Mr. Thomas had any availability, and so this was us trying to meet in the middle for that. And, it was Good Friday.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So people trying to get down here on a holiday weekend. So, if you would like to move it up to the week of April 1st, that's just a lot on your time, but we're happy to accommodate whatever schedule you would like.
What do you guys think? I'm just trying to think, because we're coming up on budget.
I understand that, but I mean, I don't know that a 3-week difference is going to really matter all that much as far as their understanding intimately of our budget. I mean, I think that we shouldn't put this decision on at the same time as appointing a city council member. Those are two really big decisions that we need to make sure we're dedicating enough time and attention to. I'm fine with this schedule. Truly, it's 6 weeks.
Yeah, I know. It just seems like
It does seem.
We've already been strung out for so long now, so that seat was empty.
If I could add one other piece that I think, just to add to what Lauren had mentioned, my understanding is you're going to be interviewing and trying to make a decision on your Mr. Stevens replacement. I don't know when that happens for sure, but it's somewhere in April, as I recall. So that was
April.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was it, Mr. Barrow?
15 April.
Okay, so here's the other element. As I said, candidates are as reviewing you as much as you're reviewing them.
Yes.
That's a wild card. I realize it's only 1 of 5, but it's an important element because whoever you appoint is ultimately going to be working with all 5 of you. And that's the other piece we think that, although this is a little bit longer we think candidates are going to want to know who that person is because they're about to make a significant decision if offered the position. So we also felt that was the other reason to make it happen after that appointment occurred, and hopefully that person at least is known and could participate in some fashion in this selection process.
Okay, thank you, sir. And as soon as we make that selection, city manager, for Ray's seat, get them all the background information on all these candidates.
Understood.
As soon as possible. Okay. Are we good with this format?
Mr. Mayor, I'm good with the schedule as presented.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. You got anything else, Doug?
Yes, my only last question is just in terms of cost. Typically, the community would cover the cost of the candidate for travel and incidentals to come in, whether they're driving or flying. It'd be the way you'd only handle your expenses in terms of, not first class and things of that nature, and coach fare and things of that. But one of the things that we typically, if you look at best management practices, this is a family consideration. Some of these folks have spouses or partners. We typically encourage that you would also invite the spouse or the partner to be to participate, so that they had a chance to participate in the community tours, the meet and greets, see the community, and be engaged as well. Our experience is that if a candidate loves the community but a spouse or a partner doesn't, it doesn't make for a long-term relationship. So we would normally encourage you to consider not only inviting the candidate but also covering the cost of the candidate and a spouse or a partner to come. That's a fairly typical process, but I understand that's ultimately a policy call to make. So I wanted to get clarity on that.
Yeah.
What would happen is they would make their own travel arrangements and they just get reimbursed for those costs after the fact, and handle it. So you don't have to worry about the transportation logistics. Although we would normally encourage you to rent or book the hotel room so that you can avoid sales tax on that and have that as a direct bill for those individuals.
Yeah. I'd actually sponsor at least one person, but Cowboy wouldn't like that, like bringing a stranger into the house. So, okay.
Yeah, I'm all aboard with families. I think it's a small investment to make to potentially pick the right person that's invested in our community.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Does that sound like consensus?
But we're not.
That works for me.
We're not putting them up at Hammock Dune Resort, so forget about it.
Okay, so we're going to invite not only the candidates, but also spouses or partners and cover those related associated costs.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
good.
Yes, sir.
That's all I've got for you tonight, folks. I appreciate it. I know this is a difficult decision, and I will follow up with all the candidates and bring them up to speed, and I'll keep your staff plugged in terms of if we have any transitions or changes of anybody that may not be participating. But in the meantime, we'll start moving forward based on this schedule and the steps that I've outlined.
All right. Thank you so much, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, folks. You have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay. We've already had public discussion. We're going to move on to E2. Doug, you're in the right spot. Presentation on the updated wireless master plan. Doug, whenever you're ready.
Yes, sir. Get this technology ready here.
Hey, you put them over there so I can see if I want to.
Mayor, City Council, while Doug's getting his presentation together, just wanted to remind you that this is all, this is indicated in your strategic action plan as a current City Council objective and priority. And one of our tasks was to review our wireless master plan that was adopted back in 2016 by City Council. So Doug is here to kind of explain the process, different tower sites, but ultimately this is your process for wireless towers. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So good evening, Mayor and Council. Apologize for some of the audio issues with Zoom this evening, but appreciate you allowing me to be your translator. I'm here tonight with Estelle Lins. She's a planner for the Community Development Department, and we are here to present to you an update to the city's wireless master plan.
Yes, sir.
So this evening we'll go over what the wireless master plan is and its history, why the wireless master plan is necessary, and then look at the sites being proposed in the updated master plan. The wireless master plan is the city's strategic approach to tackling the issue of inadequate cell coverage throughout Palm Coast. Since some of you may not be entirely familiar with the purpose of the wireless master plan, we'll start with a brief overview to give everyone a clear understanding of what it is and how it works. To address the issue of poor cellular coverage in Palm Coast, the city went out to bid in 2015 to find a vendor who could help create a comprehensive plan and review our existing codes to recommend any necessary changes. Diamond Communications won that bid and played a key role in drafting the original wireless master plan. Diamond's approach to creating the master plan was to use radio frequency or RF analysis to identify areas that the city needed better coverage. From that analysis, they pinpointed 10 coverage areas, and the next step was to identify city-owned properties within those areas that could potentially host a tower. The city formed a team of staff from various departments to work on the project. They evaluated the identified parcels, and those that met the criteria were included in the original master plan, which was officially adopted by City Council on January 16th of 2018. For the first 5 years, Diamond Communications and the city were under contract, and Diamond had the right of first refusal to build towers on properties included in the master plan. That exclusivity allowed Diamond to market these locations to carriers aggressively and quickly construct towers once contracts were in place. During that time, Diamond successfully constructed 3 towers, one near the Southern Rec Center on Belterre, one near Water Treatment Plant 1 off Palm Coast Parkway, one by Fire Station 24 off Palm Harbor Parkway. After the original contract expired, Diamond was granted 2 additional site leases for towers, one off Royal Palms in the town center area, and one off US 1 and Kansas Woods near the future Maintenance Operations Center. There was also an additional lease approved for a site at 7 Clubhouse Drive, but the lease option expired without being executed, so that lease is no longer active. We'll discuss this location in more detail in a few minutes. After the contract between Diamond and the city ended in 2023, City Council had to decide how to move forward. Rather than pursuing another exclusive contract, Council chose to open up the sites listed in the wireless master plan to allow any tower company to request and build on these locations. Diamond Communications supported this open access approach and has continued to actively pursue opportunities to build new towers in Palm Coast. Now let's talk about how the wireless master plan fits into the city's land development code. Specifically, section 4.20 of the code is all about wireless telecommunications, and within that, section 4.20.6.a sets the guidelines for where wireless facilities should be located. It provides a clear order of preference for which locations should be considered for the towers, with sites in the master plan at the top of the list. What that means is if a tower company wants to build a tower, their first step is to check if there's a suitable site available in the master plan near their desired location. The Land Development Code makes a distinction between city-owned property and other public property because the original master plan included some properties owned by Flagler Schools. However, with the updated master plan we're presenting today, only city-owned properties are included, so that distinction is no longer applicable. If a suitable site from the wireless master plan isn't available, the next step is to consider other city-owned properties, and after that, private land. Properties not in the wireless master plan must demonstrate their suitability. Estelle's going to explain more about how that process is outlined in the next subsection of the Land Development Code.
Good evening, council members. The sites identified in the wireless master plan have been pre-qualified for compliance with regulations and can proceed to request a site development permit through the technical site plan process. The Land Development Code section 4.20.09 lists the submittal requirements for all new towers. Should the proposed cell tower not follow the preferred hierarchy, the applicant must also provide the items listed in Land Development Code 4.20.06.b, which are listed on this slide, and which include affidavits from a radio frequency engineer demonstrating that the preferred sites have been analyzed and are not suitable, an affidavit demonstrating that the location will not adversely affect single-family residential uses or environmentally sensitive areas, and they must provide all land uses within 300 feet. Also, if the proposed cell tower site is not identified on the wireless master plan, approval by the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board is required through the special exception process. This process allows the board to include conditions for approval, such as additional setbacks, additional landscaping, increased buffers, the design, etc. It should be noted that cell towers are allowed in all non-residential zoning districts, including public, semi-public, or the PSP zoning district. They must, however, be located at least 150 feet away from any residentially zoned property. Also, all requests for cell tower approval, which include special exceptions, site plans, and permits, are reviewed by a third-party expert consultant at the expense of the applicant for compliance with all local and federal regulations.
Having reviewed how properties both in and outside of the master plan are addressed in the Land Development Code, we wanted to walk you through the ground lease approval process. This will help clarify key steps in the process where council can either approve or deny a tower. First, let's start with sites that are in the wireless master plan. So for these sites, the process begins with council's approval to add them to the master plan. There is no way for a site to be added to the master plan without council's approval. So once a site is on the master plan, a tower company can reach out to the city to request that location. From there, staff reviews the location to ensure it complies with the necessary regulations. If the site is found to be compliant, we then negotiate the terms of the ground lease with the company. That lease must come before City Council for approval. This step is your most significant decision point. If council does not want a tower at the proposed location, you can simply deny the lease. If the lease is approved, the company proceeds by applying for a technical site plan and then a building permit. So now let's look at how sites that are not in the master plan are dealt with. For these sites, the process starts when a tower company contacts the city and request an evaluation of a specific city-owned location. Staff reviews the property, and if it is deemed suitable, we proceed with negotiating a ground lease. This lease also must come before City Council for approval. If Council approves the lease, the company then applies for a special exception. The reason the ground lease approval has to come first is that the company needs to show it has authorization to build at the location when it applies for the special exception. The application is then reviewed by the Planning Board. If they approve, the next steps are the same as with sites in the master plan, which are applying for a technical site plan and then a building permit. The only time Council would see the item again is if the Planning Board denies the application and the company appeals that decision. So to sum it up, in both processes, whether the site is part of the master plan or not, City Council has complete control over where towers are constructed on city property. And now let's take a closer look at why the wireless master plan remains essential for the city of Palm Coast. This chart here illustrates what most of us already know, that traditional landlines have been steadily declining for years, while cell phone ownership has become nearly universal. For the vast majority of us, our cell phones are now our primary means of communication. What's particularly interesting is that about 15% of U.S. residents are considered smartphone dependent. This means they have no home broadband service and rely entirely on their smartphones for both communication and internet access. This trend is even more pronounced among those in the lowest income bracket, with 27% of those being smartphone dependent as of 2021. It's important to remember that this technology is not just about entertainment or internet browsing. For many people, their cell phone is the primary lifeline for communication, whether by phone calls, text messages, or accessing essential online services. The maps you see here were provided to the city by Diamond Communications. They show a heat map of what's considered reliable wireless coverage in Palm Coast for the three major carriers.
Hey, Doug, I had a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Before you move too far on. On that last slide, smartphone dependency, what's the metric here that we're using to define this? It seems interesting that there's such a upward peak in cell phone usage, but then smartphone dependency seems to be flat. And so just kind of trying to understand that.
Yeah, this was from national data that I pulled. I can get the direct source for you, but it's basically, I'm not sure what the source was off the top of my head, but it was people who had obviously no internet or other
Okay,
means
so
at
they have
home.
no alternative means to reach the internet or communications?
Correct, their phone was
Gotcha.
their primary means, correct.
Gotcha, thanks.
So the data you see here is crowdsourced. It is measured using a metric called Reference Signal Received Power, or RSRP. RSRP is measured in decibel milliwatts, or dBm. So reliable coverage is defined as anything above negative 100 dBm. And while the color key on these maps cannot be adjusted, which can make it a little hard to distinguish, just understand the darker the color, the more reliable the coverage. So the lighter yellow areas are still considered reliable. They're just not as strong as the darker areas are. So these maps here highlight the areas of unreliable coverage, which is defined as anything below negative 100 dBm. You may have experienced this firsthand while driving down parts of Belterre, State Road 100, or Old Kings Road and having dropped calls or poor signal quality. It's important to note that these maps only show coverage within the city of Palm Coast. They don't show capacity, which is a different but equally important issue. Coverage refers to the ability to get a cellular signal. In other words, how many bars you see on your phone. Capacity, on the other hand, is about how many users a tower can support at once. You might notice that at certain times of the day, your call quality gets worse or your internet slows down, even when your signal strength looks the same. That's usually a capacity issue. More users are connected to the same tower, competing for the same resources or bandwidth. Capacity issues become especially obvious right after a hurricane. With many people without power or home internet, there's a surge in demand on the cellular network, and connection speeds and reliability take a noticeable hit. Just like coverage problems, capacity issues are addressed by expanding infrastructure, either by upgrading existing equipment or adding new radios. Emergency services in Flagler County rely heavily on cellular connectivity for their daily operations. Enhanced cellular coverage plays a critical role in improving the effectiveness of Flagler's first responders, enabling them to better protect our citizens during emergencies. Cellular networks provide real-time communication and data sharing, giving law enforcement, fire, and EMS teams immediate access to crucial information about ongoing situations. This includes details about location, severity, and potential risks, information that helps responders make well-informed decisions and prioritize their efforts effectively. The Palm Coast Fire Department, along with its automatic aid partners in Flagler County and Flagler Beach, uses automatic vehicle location, or AVL, systems powered by advanced cellular connectivity. These systems ensure the closest, most appropriate unit is dispatched and directed along the fastest route to the scene. The result is faster response times and enhanced coordination between teams, ultimately saving lives and minimizing property damage. Unfortunately, because of unreliable coverage throughout Palm Coast, our fire department has to rely on 2 cellular providers instead of just 1. By overlaying different providers, our trucks can operate using the strongest signal available in the area at any given moment. But when it comes to emergencies, it's not just first responders that rely on robust cellular coverage. Most people who call 911 in Flagler County do so from a cell phone. In the past 3 months alone, 87% of calls to the Flagler County Dispatch Center came through a cellular connection. Of those, 81.2% were wireless calls, and 5.8% were text to 911 messages. The rest, 10.3%, came from voice over IP devices, while only 2% came from traditional landlines. As more essential services depend on reliable cellular coverage, it's crucial for the city to continue to promote and advocate for improved connectivity throughout Palm Coast. So the Wireless Master Plan is the city's strategic approach to improving our cellular coverage, which is why we're presenting this updated plan to you this evening. The revisions we're proposing include refreshed background information and updated references to ensure the document is accurate and current. More importantly, this updated plan provides a revised list of city-owned properties that would be pre-approved by council for potential cell tower installations. This process ensures clarity and consistency in how we move forward to enhance coverage throughout our community. At this point, I'll turn it over to Estelle, who will walk you through how these sites were selected for inclusion in the Wireless Master Plan.
In 2023, City Council set a strategic action plan priority of having the city's land assets inventoried and analyzed. Administration created a multi-departmental team to perform this. During this process, city-owned lands were identified which had excess property with the potential to accommodate a wireless communication facility. These sites were further analyzed by staff's development review team to pre-qualify them as suitable locations. Several factors were analyzed, including they had to be city-owned property, they had to have an area suitable, large enough to fit a cell tower with the associated equipment. They had to have be the correct distance away from residentially zoned property, which is 150 feet. Had to have access. We analyzed the wetlands and floodplain, whether there were stormwater or drainage issues, existing easements on the property, or if there were deed restrictions. And we identified 10 new sites during this process. Additionally, the team used the same criteria to re-examine the sites on the existing wireless master plan. Of the 26 sites that are currently on the existing wireless master plan that are city-owned properties, many sites were ruled out for reasons including the fact that they've had a cell tower constructed on them. They have been developed for other purposes and no longer have the land available. They're now currently too close to residentially zoned property, had access issues, wetlands, floodplain concerns, etc. So 8 sites remain, so there's a total of 18 now. As the city acquires new property, the property is reviewed to determine if there is excess land that may be able to accommodate a cell tower. If there is, we will review the property with the same criteria to determine whether it should be recommended for addition to the wireless master plan. And also with this wireless master plan, we are also recommending that council approve that the city manager or designee have the authority to remove sites from the master plan if we find they no longer meet the criteria. Sometimes the surrounding land uses change and a property on the master plan is no longer meets the 150-foot minimum distance requirement, or deeper examination of the location may reveal something that didn't come up on the initial review that would reveal that the site is not suitable. Authorizing the city manager to remove sites from the master plan would streamline the process of keeping the list updated, but adding sites to the master plan would still require council approval.
So for now, let's walk through the locations that staff are proposing to include in the updated wireless master plan. We'll start at the north part of the city and work our way south. And first, we'll highlight sites that are considered already existing, and these are locations where there's already an approved ground lease in place. After that, we'll move on to the sites we are recommending for inclusion in the updated plan. And the step-by-step approach will give you a clear picture of what's currently established and what's being proposed to enhance our coverage moving forward. So in this view, you'll see 5 existing wireless communications facilities highlighted. It's worth noting that one located at the top left is marked as both an existing site and a proposed site, which is why it has 2 identifiers. The reason for this is that although a ground lease has been approved, construction on the tower hasn't started yet. Our approach is to keep a site on the proposed list until construction actually begins. This precaution ensures we have options available if something falls through during the process. Setting aside the properties in the lower right hand near the golf course, which we'll discuss in a minute, there are 8 proposed master plan sites highlighted here. As mentioned earlier, the site in the upper left is both an existing and a proposed location. Are there any questions on the highlighted location shown before you?
Anyone have any questions? No, go right ahead, Doug.
Okay. So we want to take a moment to discuss this area because it's received a lot of attention over the past few years. Initially, a location at the Palm Harbor Golf Course was part of the wireless master plan. While Diamond Communication was still under contract with the city, they requested a lease for that location. The lease was presented to council during the December 8th, 2020 workshop. During the following December 15th, 2020 business meeting, residents voiced their opposition to the location, and there were also questions about the exact location in the master plan, and City Council chose to defer a decision until the January 19th, 2021 meeting. At that meeting, Council voted to remove the golf course from the master plan and exclude it from future consideration for a cell tower location. After that, another potential location was identified nearby at 7 Clubhouse Drive, where there is currently a utility lift station. This site was large enough to accommodate a cell tower while maintaining the required 150-foot distance from residentially zoned property. However, this site was not part of the master plan and would have required going through the special exception process. The ground lease for the 7 Clubhouse Drive site was brought to council at the June 14th, 2022 workshop. During the following June 21st business meeting, staff provided a detailed review of all existing city-owned properties in the area, explaining why those sites were not suitable for a cell tower. Diamond Communications also shared that they had explored private property options in the area without success. Council approved the ground lease, which came with an 18-month option contingent upon PLDRB approval. That 18-month option window expired without the planning board approval. The site we just discussed, referred to as Site S13, is included here because it meets the requirements for a tower property, and council had previously approved a ground lease for a tower at this location. Additionally, since 2022, the city has acquired property in the area for the new Fire Station 22 site. This property also meets the requirements for a tower and is presented here for consideration as Site S14. Right now, there are still 2 carriers, AT&T and Verizon, interested in adding coverage in this area. The challenge is that this is a well-developed residential area, and residents often don't want a tower visible from their properties. These 2 city-owned properties, Site S13 and Site S14, are the only 2 viable options in the area that could accommodate a tower. We're presenting them here for your consideration to add one, both, or neither to the wireless master plan. With carrier interest in the area, however, if you choose to approve a location, I would expect council would likely receive a request for a ground lease relatively soon. So, are there any questions about these 2 locations?
Go ahead, Vice Mayor. I see it
Thank
coming.
you.
I don't even have
Well,
to
this is
look.
my district, so
I
I
know.
know this is a big concern for a lot of people. So we can put the tower on new Fire Station 22, correct?
Yes, ma'am. They did an evaluation
On
of the
that
site,
property?
that it would fit, and yes, ma'am.
Then I would advocate to get rid of the location on Clubhouse Drive. Now, if we did that, would it cover the area that Clubhouse Drive would have otherwise covered?
Actually, it's a preferred site to the Clubhouse Drive. They wanted to be further north, and this gets them further north, so it's preferred to being at Clubhouse Drive.
Okay, then I would advocate to just remove S13 from the master plan altogether. Obviously, we don't need it. It's been a really controversial site. So, why don't we just eliminate that potential controversy in the future and go with Fire Station 22? Do we foresee any issues in the future with putting the tower on that property?
From like an operational perspective?
Correct. Or wetlands, anything that could come up?
No, I think it was evaluated for those criteria.
Yes, they've already identified an area that a cell tower can fit on that property with access and meeting the preliminary criteria.
Is that where 22's going? I thought it was over here on this side, that looks like it's going into a residential neighborhood. What's wrong? I thought the station was going right there. Am I wrong? Is that?
No, it's that corner where all the signs were during the campaign.
Fire station is going?
Yes, it's at the corner of Palm Coast Parkway and Colbert Lane.
Yeah.
But on the south side or the north side?
Northeast
side.
corner.
That's where the fire station's going?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So
I'm almost certain we're gonna get pushback on that, though. This doesn't change anything as far as those residents on that, on the golf course. They're still gonna push back on that.
well, it's going to be city property. I mean, the fire station will be there.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying as far as the public pushback, it's not the city, the residents. What's gonna change their argument from, Doug, you've been through this longer than most of us. Where was the other, can you put your cursor where the other proposed site was?
You mean for the 7 Clubhouse Drive?
The one that they finally said, no, we're not gonna do it. Diamond pulled out of it. Where is that at?
Right here, S13.
It's that one. So what's gonna change the argument from it being there to, what's the distance to the other one? You can throw a rock and hit it, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact distance, but it's not too far.
You see what I'm saying? You're gonna have the same pushback from the public.
Well, I think the difference is, one, this is kind of an easement in the back of the golf course, right? Whereas this is on city property, so
Yes.
it's kind of, the other ones were kind of abutting people's homes.
They weren't kind of abutting, they were abutting
Yeah,
people's
yeah.
homes. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean,
they're
they
in
were on
somebody's
top of
backyard.
people's homes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do think there will be a big difference, honestly, Mayor.
Why don't we save the decision until we have public comment? Can we do
Hey,
that?
Mr. Mayor?
Can, yeah, obviously.
Well, not make it right this second, but before he's finished, we'll do it. Go ahead, Councilman Gambaro.
Mr. Mayor, yes, from an operational perspective, as Doug pointed out, given that our first responders, are relying more and more on wireless, I think it makes sense to co-locate that tower with the new fire station there on the corner of where Fire Station 22 is going to go. I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, I get that.
That's all I have, thanks.
I get that, but you're going to have some, I see pushback from the residents on it, but, and we can get feedback before we make a final decision on it, if that's okay with.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm fine with that too, Mayor, getting feedback, obviously. But just because we're approving this location doesn't mean that a tower will be there tomorrow, right? We're just keeping it in the master plan?
That's correct. I mean, they would still have to develop the fire station location.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to approve the lease.
The lease,
and
all of
they
that.
wouldn't- Yeah.
Let's
It's my
not kick that
understanding
can
that-
down the road.
Yeah, it's my understanding at this location, the way it's being developed, there would be more tree coverage
Yeah.
to help conceal the tower.
Well, I get it. You said that, you got two carriers that are interested in the location and co-locating with the fire station. I perfectly understand that. But I'm just thinking about all the stuff we went through back just a couple of years ago.
Well, listen, I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that one of the things that I know economic development will be helped by is better cell coverage, and I can't drive down Colbert and keep a call.
Yeah.
So it's important. I mean, we have to think about a lot of things, and if we can if we can co-locate this on city property, get it out of literally people's backyards from Clubhouse Drive and improve cell coverage on Colbert, I think that's a win-win-win.
Yeah, win-win-win, I get it.
And just to add to that, I have received several emails over the last few months, complaining about cell phone coverage on the Palm Harbor area in general. So there are people that are interested in getting some service because they are underserved in that area.
Okay. All right, that's fine, Doug. Go ahead. We'll hold that decision until we get some public comment,
All right,
though,
thank
just for, to talk to the public.
So moving further south, this view highlights 4 existing locations. In the bottom right, you'll see that the second site that serves as both an existing and proposed location is there. Lease was approved in 2022 for this site, just off Royal Palms, north of Town Center, but there is not a tower there yet. And so here we've highlighted the 4 proposed sites in this area. And do you have any questions on these locations?
The S3, S4 location, that's a wastewater, is that a wastewater location?
It's a rapid infiltration basin,
Yep.
RIB site,
Okay.
so spray fields.
Yeah, I think that's great because there's really no residential next to that.
Roger that.
All right. And so moving to the southmost part of the city, you'll see that there is currently no existing tower infrastructure here. Highlighted here are 4 proposed site locations. We've been working on a site lease with a tower company for site S1 located at Water Treatment Plant 1. A tower at this location is especially important for the city's operational needs as it would support radio reads of water meters in the area. It's also worth noting that all of our ground leases since 2018 include language allowing the city to install its own equipment on these towers without being charged rent for tower space. And do you have any questions on these proposed sites?
Does the county have anything on the airport property, or is it proposed?
For a tower?
Yeah.
There is a tree cell tower on the
Have one out there?
airport. Yes, sir.
Fake trees.
Yeah, fake trees.
I remember seeing one up in Jacksonville.
So S11, we don't foresee any problems with the airport overlay that was currently talked about recently. I'm assuming they're not that tall.
I believe we looked at the airport zone, but that would be something that would go through, if they were to apply for a lease there, we would dig into that deeper, and they'd also be part of the site plan and permit review process.
They have to meet all the regulations to get
Right,
site plan approval, and part of that is FAA approval.
And so this is correct that we have no cell phone towers south of 100?
That's correct. There may be some private ones, but there's no city-owned.
Okay, got you. I was
And
like,
Doug, and Doug, just to confirm, the S11 is Fire Station 26?
That's correct.
That's the new 26 location? Okay. Yes. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay. So this is just a list that, of the existing sites that we went through, as shown in the wireless master plan. And these are the list of the properties we reviewed for recommendation. Again, if it's your pleasure, we'll remove site S13 before we bring this back to you again next week for approval. And with that, city recommends adopting the updated language of the wireless master plan to include updated properties, as well as granting the city manager the right to remove parcels from the master plan but not add them should further analysis reveal that the site no longer meets the requirements.
Okay, so we can add them, but the city manager has the discretion to remove them, but cannot add. It has to come back to city council.
That's right. She cannot add. It's more of an administrative responsibility.
Roger, I got it. Is that it, Doug?
Yes, sir.
All right, stand fast, don't move. We'll open any further discussion for the dais. Public comment, come on up, Dennis. Give me your take on it. I know you're ready to speak. Mr. McDonald, come on up here. You were heavily involved in all that going on over there, I'm assuming, so. We can put a tower on his head and have him walk around with it. Mobile.
Yeah. Well,
Yes, sir.
I was involved in all of it, and so here, I sent you an email tonight. And
Yeah, I
sent
was
to the
looking at
city.
it.
Okay. And so all I wanted you to know is that cell phones have not been upgraded in the criteria that's used by the federal government in over 30 years. It was all established in 1996 by the TCA Act, Telecommunication Act, passed by Congress. That is what gives the sweeping power to anybody to locate a tower. So, but what I can tell you is this, is that we know a lot of things have changed, and one of the things is, in New York, there was a decision a couple of years ago by a federal judge that said, guess what, okay? You have the right under the TCA Act to connect landlines to cell phones, but you don't have a right to provide data. And when you provide data, what it does is it cranks up the 5G, and all of you take the effects of it. Your kids take it, everybody takes it. So, please pay attention to the website I gave you. That is Children's Health Defense Network. That's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He started that. And so from that, I can tell you for sure that what we are seeing right now is definitely big changes in HHS. Okay, they're going to be weighing in on it. The Federal Communication Act, Commission is going to take a look at new cell phone data. What we allow for cell phone EMI, okay, is 2 to 3 times as much as they allow in other countries of the world, certainly Europe. So we need to be cognizant of that, and the technology has changed. The technology in 30 years ago, people were wandering around practically with bag phones. Okay, now we've got these cell phones that have all kinds of power, and you guys are putting them up to your head and carrying around in your body, and you all know that that's bad. So, pay attention to that, and I can guarantee you for sure, just hands-on knowledge, I know that things are changing big time at HHS. Okay, it is not business as usual as it has been for years. Like I say, I know that hands-on for a fact. And so there's going to be things that are going to be changes, and you may be putting things in place, okay, that are going to be overruled or thought to be, beyond the limit. Just the idea that we have a cell phone tower, on the high school down in Flagler, that's absolute insanity, okay? We have another one right next to Frida Zamba, or on Frida Zamba's property, but where is it? It's right next to Wadsworth and also the elementary school, next to our kids. This is just, you really need to take a look at this real hard and set this thing back, okay, and take a lot of input on it, but you already know that there's problems with cell phones, and I just want to say one thing. When we did this, I want Councilman Gambaro to pay attention to the fact that the guy who actually did this was Lou Vitale, who is the owner of Vitatech, which is the guy who cloaks military installations for the government and the military, and also the guy who grounded the New World's Trades building. There's a problem with EMI, for sure. So,
okay.
Read up on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Ms. Long.
Just bring in my prop.
Your prop?
My cell phone. We cannot preeminently you cannot preeminently make decisions about what the new health organizations may or may not do. And since everyone's very concerned with the kids, and I think I'm the designated mom here besides Vice Mayor, but I do outrule you with 3 kids, I think, so I'm gonna take my 3 kid voice votes. When my children have an emergency and I need to call 911, I don't care about the EMI. If I don't want EMI, I will lock it in the safe box in my home and follow whatever I want to do. That is a rule in whatever I want to do in my home. As far as my need for emergency services, if one of my kids is sick, I want them there, right there. I do not want our public services to be negatively impacted because of fears that may or may not be warranted. But the fact of the matter is, all of you have one of these with you right now. Right? Don't make judgment calls based on that. This is a plan. You're not putting your hand to God and saying, we're building them right now, we're putting them up. So remember, you're doing public safety. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Leslie Johnson from the Peace section. While I don't have any particular dog in this hunt, I do recall that time with the 13 section for the cell tower and what happened. Apparently, it was to be erected next to, I want to say, the Green Lion. It was that restaurant that was right there at the golf course, and they arbitrarily decided to move it nearer to the homes. Why? I don't know. However, even the mayor was caught off guard at that time. I can't speak to what she might have known or not known. However, she didn't understand. They moved it. Mr. Vitale was the one who caught the geographical change. So my thought, my suggestion, my recommendation for you is whatever location a tower goes up by this company, please monitor it carefully and that it goes in the exact geographical location that gets approved by the city council. This is so important because they have a history of moving. We cannot allow that. We do need the cell phone service. We do need the care, absolutely. However, that's just my only recommendation, and thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Rita Medeiros with Grand Haven. So they have the National Toxicology Program of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. They quietly disclosed that they'll stop the studying. They spent $30 million on animal studies and found cancer, heart damage, DNA damage associated with the exposure to cell phone radio frequency radiation at the levels comparable to those experienced by Americans today. I'd like to put that there. I don't know what happened with the emergencies. 50, 60 years ago, we grew up without them. You know, we were okay. So that's my input.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mary Vasilevsky, East Section again. I'm not sure if we're still doing introductions. I wasn't planning on coming up for this, but I would like to share something anecdotal. I grew up here. I went to Old Kings, Indian Trails, and then FPC. Moved away for about 8 years and came back recently. I'm in that millennial phase where we started to grow up, like go from dial-up to Wi-Fi data. I didn't have a reliable cell phone. I had Sprint at the time. Oh, I had a reliable cell phone. I didn't have reliable service. I was a nerd. I stayed after school very often. And my mom called the police on me because I was studying after school. There was a Model UN. There was something that went on because she couldn't get a hold of me because the buildings in FPC do not transmit signal. She called me. She couldn't get into the school. I'm not the only person who had experiences like this. You don't know with all these guns that are available, the school shootings, we need access. School shootings are happening more than they have in the past. Not trying to get political, but this is just, we have a significant culture shift than 50 years ago on what students experience on the day-to-day. Without having access, I am concerned about our health and safety. You know, I literally have been holding my cell phone this whole time. So these are habits that I need to change for my own sake. And yes, we should be aware for kids. However, we have to keep this in mind when we're talking about health emergencies, children with medications. Our system is now built on wireless communication. The generations here that are raising kids don't know how to survive without Wi-Fi. And so when you have kids at risk, I don't have kids myself, but I was the youngest and I do feel like a big kid sometimes, right? I'm sure we have that all the time. But this is just something, we have a new generation, we have a new way of living, and with multiple jobs that our parents are juggling, that many still do juggle, we need to have a way to maintain connection, especially with buses. We don't have parents able to, not all parents are able to pick their children up from school. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional about this, because how many times did we walk home from school alone? You know, society is changing, the dynamics of crime are changing. There are more documented instances of blended families where a parent that has a restraining order can go and kidnap the child. So just when it comes to safety, I think we need to find a balance for our community. Thank you so much for hearing me out. I will sit down.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else, public comment? Seeing no one come forward, I'll bring it back to the dais. Do we have consensus to approve that one site off of Clubhouse? Everybody good with it at the fire station? Councilman Gambaro's already illustrated his approval. So Doug, anything else? We're good? We're good, council? That's it.
Sir, any further comments? I'm good. I appreciate your time.
Other comments? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We'll make you move them later.
Mayor, I was just going to mention that this will come back to you at a business meeting to take official action.
Yes, ma'am. Appreciate that. All right, so we're getting there. Item F, public participation. Anyone have any public participation left, other than items on the agenda? Well, get up there, Miss Stevens. What's your
I'm
question?
getting stiff. I'm getting old. My question was, I heard you guys talking about filling Ray's seat and releasing the resumes of the top 5 finalists. I was going to ask, how soon could I get a copy of all 5 of those resumes so I can look through them, and just in case, because I don't know how many people are applying for the seat.
Yes, ma'am.
And I would like to have as much time as possible to look at those, so if I am chosen, I can sit down and I can actually, because I've only seen what's been put up here. I've watched all the meetings. If I've not been at the meeting, I've seen all the information. And I agreed with what I've heard so far of the people, that you guys seem to rank top 3, but I would like to see their paperwork myself, because I'd rather be prepared than underprepared, if that's okay. I don't know when I can have that information. I can even come pick it up tomorrow if you can't give it to me, or whenever.
I would advocate that all of the applicants for city council for Councilman Stevens' seat
We
be
should all get
given
that.
that information.
Yeah,
Understood.
okay.
Agreed.
That's
Agreed.
easy peasy. That's
Okay,
easy
cool,
peasy.
thanks.
It seems like Pierre would have already put it out there. What's going on, Brian? Is he slipping? Is he getting old? Any more public comments? Anyone? Yes, sir.
Paul Andrzejak. I'm just here to comment on the potential development moratorium. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm Paul Andrzejak, here to comment on the potential development moratorium. I think, based on various other comments, the idea of a compromise, the idea of really thinking this through, I think would be the best course of action. I think an overall blanket moratorium can be detrimental to a community from a tax basis, from a development standpoint, and I don't just mean home building, I mean every kind of development, residential, retail, industrial, everything. That's just my point of view. They're dealing with that in Volusia County right now. They're dealing with it very specifically in Edgewater. A lot of the developers are taking themselves out of the equation, and what that really does is it prevents the growth of that community, but in an infrastructural way, very specifically from the tax dollar standpoint, and it all really then goes on to the residents. It doesn't really fix many things because then the money is depleted. Yeah, that's my point of view, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else for public comment? Yes, Ms. Long.
It's fine, I don't really want to be here either. Good evening. Okay,
Then
so
go home.
I can't, it's my job, just like it's your job.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
Last year, in 2024, the impact of single-family homes in our community was $57.4 million in local income for people in the industry, $92 million in taxes and other revenue for the local governments, 8,420 local jobs. recurring annual impacts from last year. This is once those people became residents. I did multiply out these numbers if you received this similar looking document. Take the 100 homes times the number of permits for Palm Coast. $90 million in local income, $26 million in taxes and other revenue for local governments. That's the continued revenue that you'll receive, and 1,480 local jobs. It was said that residents will flee the city. Would you flee the city for $146.28? How about for $240.48? Because that is the cost on a low-use water bill over the increases for two raises in 25 and 26 and through 27. $240.48. Has anyone rented a U-Haul lately? Or if you've had to hire actual movers, it costs way more than that, like 10 times more than that if you need them to pack your truck. I know because I moved my house. And no one's going to flee their home for that. In fact, I think that between Netflix, Disney, and Hulu, I've probably experienced those increases just from that alone in the last 2 years. I'm not speaking from a place of privilege. Some of you know, I was a single mom for 5 years. During that time, I worked a job that after paying daycare, I took home a net of $40 a month. Palm Coast Observer, I was the person who flung those newspapers into your driveway. I did that because that's what it took to put diapers on my child. And this is where I am now, because I worked hard. This is not us against them. This is not the building community against anyone else. We built those homes that you're in, that everyone's in. We are here to work together. You need the impact fees to fix the problems. We're going to be paying $2,500 more per home for cost recovery. And while it's not something anyone's thrilled about, we're happy to do it because it's the right thing to do. It's how the utility department will continue to function, and we understand that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Come on up, Tony. I know you got something to say. Yes, sir.
I put my glasses on for this one. Tony Amaral, Palm Coast. Surveyor, clearing, fill and grading, slab, termite, block mason, framer, plumber, AC, electrician, sheetrock, roofer, flooring, tilers, cabinets, granite, trim carpenter. This is not a complete list of subcontractors I use, but it is a complete list of the local tradespeople I use. All of them are local small businesses. This doesn't include all of our local suppliers I purchase from, or even the box stores, the embroiderer, the gas stations, the local and national restaurants, the list could go on. Why do I tell you this? Because if we don't figure a way to get our water and sewer up to date and increase capacity, these are the people and small businesses that will be affected by a default moratorium by the state or one of your doing. I tell you this because I am a resident of Palm Coast since I was 9.5 years old, 42 years in total. I'm a local small business owner. It just happens that my business is building the homes you live in. Playing the blame game is easy, but making the hard decisions, the ones that are right, but maybe not popular, is your job. If you cannot see the importance of this now, when will you? You are all pro-business. You challenge the developers and by default the local builders, because there is a distinction, to bring in industry to support this quote-unquote growth that is required to fund functioning government. We are an industry, one that the federal government uses to analyze and forecast growths and downturn. I dare say we are the largest industry in this county. In 2008, with the collapse of the housing market, all aspects of this county were affected by the loss of that revenue. Any time frame of a moratorium would affect the city in many ways. You need growth to add to your tax base, to add jobs, to move forward. Palm Coast is not at capacity. 50 years ago, it was said Palm Coast built out would be 200,000 residents. 50 years ago, we were never supposed to stay a small city. Do we have growing pains? Yes. Do we have infrastructure issues? Yes. Now is your time to stand and fix a part of that. Since comments on the building industry not giving a proportionate share have been made often, let us remember that over 1/3 of your water and sewer fix is budgeted for replacement and repair. I am one of the users. That is how this works. Enterprise is funding the city. Several other projects are fully funded through the impact fees. We are paying, have paid, and will continue to pay into the future. Growth is coming. Will you be the reason Palm Coast doesn't keep up? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mr. McDonald.
I just wanted to say that sitting here tonight, I heard two false premises that I wanted to bring forward to you. You know, number one is, in my mind, what they're talking about, you know, or what you're talking about doing is a moratorium. It's not a slam down of absolutely zero building permits. Everybody gets thrown out of work. Obviously, that's not the scenario that's being put forward. You know, it's like this extreme argument that's being made by each side, okay? Whereas we're all gonna come together and we're gonna find something in the middle that works on this because we have to. And the other false premise that I heard tonight was that our emergency responders, the deputy in the back row and the fire chief sitting back there, both of them are carrying radios. That's how they keep contact with their central command. And we spent millions of dollars in this county about 5 years ago. I remember the arguments, maybe 6 years ago, that they had to upgrade the radios, and we did. And so, you know, the emergency responders in this county all function on that radio, okay? They don't, you know, to sit here and say that emergency responders make all their responses from their cell phone is absolutely crazy. It's kind of like saying you're going to shut off all the building permits all at once in Palm Coast. So I just want everybody to kind of take a step back and see if we can all find some common ground and make this thing work, okay, to the advantage of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more public comment? Yes, ma'am, Leslie.
Hi, Leslie Johnson, Peace Action. Just got a question, and this is going to be for legal, and I'd like to see if we can't have this maybe emailed to me. Ms. Rees said that money was transferred out of the water utility and transferred elsewhere. What I want to know, and I've read, and I play with lawyers, but I'm not one, okay? What I want to know is, from what I'm reading, is that a lawful thing to do? Is that legal for them to transfer from the water utility fund? I understand it's part of the enterprise fund, but I was also of the understanding that water money had to stay for the water utility department for maintenance, upgrades, and whatnot. Can we check into that, please, and make sure that that is actually okay or not okay to transfer the funds? That's number one. Number two, I would like to know where that money went. If we had money in the water utility department, where'd it go? I don't know, okay? All I can go by is what somebody has said. If it didn't go anywhere, I'd like to know that too. So if you can help me out and help me figure out if this is a legal thing to do. I thought per Florida statute and per our ordinances, the money that gets brought in from all of us to the city for the water utility must stay with the water utility department, not be played around and bandied about within the enterprise fund itself to other areas. So if you can help me out with that, I'll appreciate that. If you need my email, let me know.
We'll probably be able to answer that tonight, Leslie. It's kind of simple. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
We can answer that one. Any further public comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Denise Henry, the P section.
I'm going to remember your name in the next week or so. Yes, ma'am.
I missed a couple of weeks. I was watching my granddaughter. Well, I just want to clarify for everybody because I think people are confused. When a moratorium was mentioned, that had nothing to do with the 19,000 homes that have already been approved. Is that correct? It only has to do with approving future development. Wasn't that correct?
That was my remark. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, and everybody's worried about jobs. All of a sudden, there's 19,000 homes still out there or units to be built. So I don't think they have to worry too much. And right now, with housing prices starting to go down, I think that's where they need to be concerned.
Thank you, ma'am. Any more public comment? Don't you be coaching anybody, Miss Long. I see you over there. I'm just messing with you. Yes, you're more than welcome to come up again if you have something to say. It's a different topic.
Yes,
And
that's
it's
what
the
she was
last,
telling
and
me.
it's the last public comments. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, no cell phone and no building moratorium. So, Mary Vasilevsky, E-section, but just wanted, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to add it. It's regarding the interviews, but you guys were discussing interviews for your candidates, and it would be, I think it would be great, a concise way to say it, it's not a red flag if someone doesn't live here. All jobs are probationary, whether you're local or not. And if someone is giving the risk to choose to move here, it could be for other reasons. They could be moving to Florida, which you guys will figure out. But I think while I always would prioritize something local, I think if there's a better fit of someone who's willing to relocate their whole life here and take the chance, because everyone cannot pass the probationary period. That's just the risk that a job has. So I think it would be not something in detriment to the detriment of the candidate. And, you know, a lot of us, as the city is growing, the dynamics are changing. And having someone who has the positionality of understanding, you know, whether it's military or cultures, we have so many cultures in Palm Coast, family dynamics of understanding what it's like to be a working parent living on a realistic salary, not realistic, but a common salary. I think it would be something that's not to the detriment, but I trust that this council will make fair decisions, and I've enjoyed hearing the way you discuss the discussion of the candidates, and it's nice to see that there are different opinions, but you all are remaining civil, and I am very grateful that this is the council that we have today, and that we can have these conversations and we can listen without a riot breaking out. So thank you all for your service, and thank you to everyone who came up for public comment and to participate in the city.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else for public comment? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment, bring it back to the dais for follow-up comments. The one for Leslie is fairly simple, right, City Manager?
Yes, Mayor. Utility revenue is not restricted, and so it can be transferred to general fund, but that is not our practice. It is a common practice around governments, but it is not our practice. In the city, we keep utility funds to utility unless it's transfers to our internal service funds like fleet, and they pay health insurance for those necessary, and IT, right? So I believe in Ms. Reese's letter, she was referring to she did not want to sign any agreements where she was not directly in charge during that time period, which was required per the consent decree, which is understandable, right? Why sign something if you were not there? Therefore, I signed. So that was taken care of.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Miller? You got anything? Oh, I'm sorry, we're still, comments. Yeah, the only money I know that's been transferred out, or there was a loan to Old Kings Road, right?
There is the Old Kings Road Special Assessment
Yep.
District.
And that loan earns us 5% interest.
Yes,
So it's making money, it's making money. That was a bad decision back in the day, but that's years and years ago. How long ago was that, city manager?
the special assessment district was established back in 2005.
That's 2005, that's ancient. Any other comments? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not about the utility fund, or the transfer question, but I did want to pose something to council. So we're obviously struggling here to figure out how we can pay for a lot of these infrastructure needs without borrowing. In my mind, the concern is borrowing $600 million. I'm not comfortable with that. I don't think that's a tenable way to operate a business, a city, any type of government entity at all. Particularly in one foul swoop, when we don't know what the future is going to bring. We truly don't know what the exact needs are going to be. And, you know, one of the things that I wrote down from one of the public comments that was made is that residential building has been, quote, the backbone of the county. I greatly appreciate all of the workers and the companies and the contributions of that industry to our community. Obviously, you're a very big reason we have this building, we have the roads, we have so many of the things that we have. But we have for far too long relied on residential building as the top industry in this county. It is time to get actual economic development into our community. And we are right on the brink of a lot of that coming here. So we have to do what we need to do to ensure we remain attractive to those businesses, to those industries, to those very large companies that have the potential to bring a lot of money into our community. They're going to need workers. We know our unemployment rate has been higher on average than the rest of the state, and I think this past month is the first time it's gone down, and I think close to a year. So we need industry, we need good paying jobs. I have never thought that a moratorium is the best thing for our community, but sometimes it's necessary. I think we can avoid it right now. My position is that rather than go all in and borrow $600 million for utilities right now, that we work to get that first bond, which is $269 million, which we need because of the FDEP agreement, the consent decree that we're under. And we have our consultant rework the numbers to see what that looks like and what impact that will have on our community. We heard several people here tonight talk about finding middle ground. What can we do to find middle ground? I think that's the middle ground. Is it going to take some adjustment? Yes. Is there a possibility we have to come back in 3 years and say, hey, are we going to need this second bond? Yes. But it is not putting all of our apples in one basket. It is allowing the ability of what we know is so close to coming here to Palm Coast in an economic development way, the county too, allowing that to continue to come here, to flourish, to give into our community, and to hopefully take the reins financially off of the backs of our residents, which is what we all want. So I would ask for consensus from this council to direct staff and our consultant to work those numbers at that $269 million bond price point. And let's see if we can get the utility rate study and plan approved, not only for that, but also to update those miscellaneous fees and charges that Ms. Long spoke about. I think we all agree that that needs to happen so that we can be cost recovery. We've already maxed out the impact fee, so that's taken care of. So if we can get consensus, at least to have the consultant bring that back and let us see what it looks like, I think that's our middle ground here.
Good call.
I'm trying.
Good call.
Can I jump in here?
Please.
Wait a minute, hold on. Okay. I'm just kidding.
You're beating my drum, so I'm excited about this because I think all the things that you said are absolutely true, that we're on the brink of changing. It has been talked about ad nauseum, multiple campaigns over the years, that we're 92% residential taxes, 8% commercial and industrial. So if we need to fund things, who pays for it? Mm-hmm. Residents, right? So how do we change that? And we're very close. I know nobody likes to hear this kind of amorphous talk about Project Magellan, and I can't tell you what it is, but I promise it's good. It's good. So
And it's not the only one.
it's not the only one, right? And so my fear is that we create a situation that they just say, we're going to go somewhere else because this is kind of crazy. And then we're stuck back in this same situation to where it's 92% you. And that's not fair, right? That's not how most cities operate. We are an outlier in the way cities operate. Most cities are 60-40. Some are even more. I think Daytona is much higher because they're actually the city of Daytona has less residents than we do, but they have far more industry, right? So I believe in finding this middle ground because I think it is very important. My question to you, Vice Mayor, is that part of this equation, right, that has been presented to us is it's time bound is one thing, right? So it starts April 1st, according to that. The other thing is, so part of that is a huge fundamental change to this plan means that we don't meet the April 1st.
Let me interrupt for a second, Councilman Miller. I don't think we were looking to execute the bonds in October. Correct?
No, I understand, but that comes with a component of a 4-1 rate increase.
It would.
So that's part of the math, right? We've talked about the math in terms of you need the rates to get the bonds, so bonds are half the funding, and then the impact fees, you need development in order to generate those, because there's an assumption of future growth that's built into this for the impact fees. There's an assumption of future growth for the rates. It assumes there's more people buying water from the city, right? So that's part of the bonds as well. So any big change to any of that kind of makes the math fall apart.
Yeah, I think that's a question for legal to see if we can still go to second read with that amendment.
So that's the question is it possible to, hear me out here, and maybe we can go back and forth and try to figure it out. But is it possible to say, as read with the caveat that the second bond issuance and the two final rate raises have to be approved by council in a separate future situation, so that we start with the plan, we do an analysis again at some future point to see what those rates have to be to finish the plan based on actual numbers of impact fees collected and those things, because right now they're all projections. And then a future council, it'll be 2 years from now, so this council might change a little bit, but a future council would then have to review that rate study again and make a final approval for the second half of this.
So I understand your
In
concern.
an interest to keep it as close to how it's presented as possible so that we don't have to do 2 more readings of it to get through and change the dates.
Yeah, so council, what, if we did make a change, will we have to come back for 2 more readings, or could we adopt the ordinance with changes that we approve?
So my gut instinct, I'm telling you, I think I could get you to yes, that we wouldn't have to change it, but I think I would need to work that out with the consultant and Carl, just to make sure, because what you're asking, you're changing the formula, right? And so when we do these changes, it's notice, do public have proper notice about what you guys are bringing before you. Are we making a significant change? I think I can get you to yes, where you wouldn't have to, do a additional read if that was proposed and that was there. I can't give you an 100% answer right now.
And that would be my interest in trying to keep it as close to the original plan as possible, but with further levels of approval so that we're not making what would be considered a significant change to the.
But I think I could get you there. I don't have a 100% answer to you right now. I want to do a little more research, talk to Mr. Cody and the consultant, and just confirm everything.
You want to do a phone a friend?
Well, and so here's,
Mr. Mayor, can I jump in?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Councilman Gambaro. You're not here. We don't see you. So go right ahead.
Sure. Now, so listen, I see, I appreciate the Vice Mayor's perspective. It is a lot of money, right? But I also see Councilman Miller's perspective. And in particular, spending time out there at the wastewater treatment plant, my concern is isolating the funds to one project and then kind of piecemealing it from there. We have a system issue, right? From PEP tank through the lift stations to the wastewater treatment plant, those repair dollars for the PEP tanks that are coming to their end of their useful life is a major issue. Again, the PEP tank, and I've said this a bunch of times, is where most of our water intrusions coming into, and it's overwhelming our system, which is causing much of the violations that we're seeing that put us into a consent decree. And so I'm in favor of maybe breaking up the project as it's laid out, but piecemealing it by project, I think it's problematic because fixing one component of it may not completely put us in compliance, but what we need to, some of the issues that we have with our consent decree. And so I think we need to ensure we look at this from a systems perspective so that we just don't add more to the problem, or really we don't fix it, because we need to fix the whole car. We just don't need to fix the transmission. We need to fix the whole thing. And so getting that loan, if you would, to pay for the whole car as an analogy, I think is in pieces is probably the best way to go. Over.
Yeah. Over.
But not out.
City manager, the first bond, how much was it supposed to be for?
$269.
$269?
Yes,
And what's the second one?
it was up. Carl, can you come help us navigate through this? Can I just, give some general statements based off some of the comments? Lenders will want to see at least a 5-year commitment, so when we are adopting a rate, we need to adopt it on a 5-year plan so that we show the lenders going for that first bond, that commitment. And then an ordinance with restrictions will be challenging for that large bond issue. So if we say, well, we're going to do this, but before we get there, we're going to do this, just keep in mind any more restrictions we adds to the challenge of getting a loan or bond. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carl.
What you got, Carl?
The first bond, I believe, is $283.4 million because it includes the issuance fees as well. I think the project costs were like that 260 something that you mentioned.
So what was the second one?
This
2028.
176 maybe, or somewhere around there. I don't remember that one specifically. But one thing that does happen when we do go out for a bond is you have a team that's put together that Murray described. You got your bond counsel, you got your finance consultant, and on that team is an engineering firm, and they have to review your long-range plan, 5 years or more, depending on what the bond, the amount of the bond and your rating and different things. But they need to certify that you have a comprehensive plan that's addressing the utility needs, the system, sufficiency, regulatory requirements. They look at all that to certify and have a declaration in there as part of that analysis when we actually go to get the bond. So it's another deep dive in the analysis of that plan. So, speaking to the caveats in the ordinance, I think, what potentially we could work on is, you have our original plan, and then we could do a second plan with only one bond in it, but I don't think we could partially approve the first plan. You'd have to have two different plans, and you'd have to prove one or the other, I think is how you'd have to move forward.
Okay, Carl, can you stand fast? Mr. Russell, Mr. De Lorenzo, can you come up here, please, too? Stay there, Carl. I'm going to ask you a question. Right there. Nope, you right here. You're on center mic.
Okay.
How long have you been with the city?
Almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years. How did we get to this place that we're in? How did we get here?
It's like you guys had mentioned, you're forecasting the future, and we don't know what the future holds.
Well, let me scope it down a little bit. Let me get a little bit more granular. How do we get to a point where we have approved 19,000 houses, 19,000 units, right? That's what's in the queue. We've got 19,000 residential houses or whatever units in the queue above our existing levels now. How do we approve those houses when we don't have the capabilities, don't take my picture anymore, Brian. When we don't have the capability to sustain what we have now, can one of you three gentlemen explain that to me and the residents of Palm Coast?
I can speak to it partially. You know, when ITT developed the city, they platted 45,000 lots. They had a 300,000 gallon wastewater plant. You can't have a system for your ultimate build out of your homes. You know, you have the 19,000 lots, but are they going to be built on in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Look at Town Center. It was platted and developed in what, 2004 or 5? How much of it's built out?
How many houses, how many units do we have in the city of Palm Coast right now? How many houses do we have in the city?
Housing units?
Housing units, apartments, total, the whole kit and caboodle. How many units do we have?
40,000?
It's between 40 and 45, right?
Yeah. We got 60,000 service connections, 60,000.
How many houses do we serve? I'm sorry, let's add that in there too. Let's go with the houses we service, meaning on the barrier island and whatever. That's not, okay. Councilman Miller said that's not fair. Okay, just
we don't have any control over that.
In our city boundaries, how many housing units total do we have in stock right now?
I think it's around 40,000, but I don't know the number exactly, sir.
40.
Okay, so we have all these facilities, and you said the original design was the one wastewater treatment plant was designed not to sustain the 40,000 houses
Right, you
initially?
can't build the infrastructure to handle the ultimate build-out capacity because it won't function.
So
And
right
when you
now-
don't have the dollars to put that in place up front. I mean, that's just like our PEP system. You know, even this PEP system that ITT put in the ground cannot service all the PEP tank lots. So we're going back in as those PEP tank lots are being built on, and we have to put in parallel PEP mains to handle the flow from those PEP tank lots. Because if they size the pipe large enough, the flow wouldn't work.
I mean, to the point is,
We have three plants, right? Water production, 2 wastewater, right?
Yes.
So we have grown that much, and we still can't even service the units we have now. We have grown that much in water treatment. We've added another wastewater. We've added 2 more water production plants, and we can't even service the how many houses? Roughly 60,000?
Well,
So you see where can you see where I'm going? I don't think I'm insane.
But-
I do see it, right? Do you guys see what I
I
see?
understand what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, but fundamentally, this happens everywhere. You don't build infrastructure in advance of potential hookups because then the users of that system at the time are paying for future users. So do you want to pay for the next 20,000 people that might live here? I don't think so.
Councilman Miller, but we are unique because
We are
we're
not
one-
unique.
we-
This
no,
is happening all over
no,
the state.
No, and our uniqueness is we have some of the highest utility rates in the state. And I would assume not just in the state, but in the country. If it's highest in our state, which is what, the 3rd largest state in the union, we have some of the highest utility rates in the state. Name another city in the state that has higher city utility rates than us.
Flagler Beach.
We've been presented with
They
that
don't
information.
count. They're small potatoes.
Well, we did compare in the chart that Murray presented to Charlotte
yeah.
County that is similar to us because they have a high amount of PEP tanks. So, you know, when I went through my original presentation on what sets our utility part different than others, PEP tanks, high maintenance, 24/7 PEP calls, lots of service, replacements, costly system.
I get it.
Our water source, hard water this region of Florida. We can't just pull water out of the river or lake or out of the ground and barely need to treat it and aerate it and use the water. We have a very extensive chemical treatment process for our water. It costs us a lot more. You know, GAEA costs them very minimal to treat their water and serve the public. For us, we don't have that benefit here. Our water is very costly to treat.
Okay, I get that, but still, we're in quite a situation.
I agree. We are in a situation. Yeah.
Mayor.
No. Mr. Russell, can you Mr. Del Lorenzo, pull up this slide here? The one with the different projects on it? the one that's got
That's Murray's
wastewater
presentation.
treatment plant.
Murray's presentation.
Number 44 of whatever that slide deck was.
I think that's the March, is that the March 4th?
That's from the March 4th meeting.
Thank you.
I'm
And
sorry.
just for the record, in our last growth report, there's 43,394 occupied lots.
That's how many houses, occupied units we have in the city now.
Yes, sir.
Carl, which one of these is yours and which one is
This one
Murray's?
is his. It'd be that one.
So if I can, just for the last few years, what I've seen, and then what I've looked at in looking at prior presentations. I said from here, 2018, in my opinion, wastewater treatment plant 1, how that was not included in the rate study is beyond me, but that wasn't Carl, okay? Carl was brought in, around 2022 to start managing the utility
22,
fund?
23, yes.
Okay. So let's be fair, okay, to the staff that is sitting here before us versus the staff that, in my opinion, grossly mishandled capital projects back in 2018. Because how you don't include the wastewater treatment plant that services the infill lots, which is where we know we have the most building, is beyond comprehension to me. So we're all kind of having to deal with this. I will just tell you guys, you will get a no from me for all four. It was closer to 500 million, not 600 million. I apologize, I misspoke earlier. You will get a no from me to fund all $500 million. So I don't know where everybody else sits, but unless we can lessen this somehow and get there to where the residents are not feeling such a strong impact from mistakes that were made 6 years ago, I'm a no. But please, sorry, you had a question about this.
No, I'm sorry, Vice Mayor. That's why we're here. That's why I love these workshops. We get to work on this as a team. So,
Mayor, is that the slide you were looking for?
that's the slide I was looking for. And I wanted to go back to Ms. Long's comment, or her, I listen to you and Toby, because you keep me up to date. I don't like some of the stuff you say, but I was a hero on Saturday, but now I'm a villain. Just so you know. But like you said in your show, you said impact fees can't go to rehabilitation and renovation, correct? Okay. And Mr. Tobin said, who's flushing the toilets? Here's the answer to Mr. Tobin. We're flushing the toilets. But we as a city collectively aren't wealthy enough to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to fix the toilets, only to add another 38,000 toilets to our home. If you take that 19,000 houses or units that are in the queue, multiply it by two, you get 38,000. See, that's our perspective, and that's the way I see it. I'm a simple man, but that's the way I see it. So anyway, let's get back to this, Mr. Russell. Okay, can you highlight anything on there? Can you highlight?
Let me try.
You can take it out of the.
Presentation mode, probably.
You can take it out of there if you need to. I don't really care, as long as we have it up on the screen. Make it large and where you can highlight. Okay. So what's the fix on there, Mr. Russell, that we have, give me the top 3 things we have to fix on there that get out of the consent decree from the state. Highlight them.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, can I jump in real quick?
Yes, yes, Mr. Gambino.
So, I would highlight everything that says wastewater treatment plant number 1, and then to include the PEP system upgrades. And oh, by the way, the storage tanks, which is a priority of ours for our legislative, lobbying agenda, those things are critical because they help with the overflow during the high water events. It gives the plants capacity to process, so you don't have stuff backing up into your into your showers, right? And so and coming out of your toilets. And I would say concurrently, we've got to expand our second wastewater treatment plant because we've got to. I mean, that's planning for the future. If we want to move forward with Project Magellan or whatever else the case may be. So these are things, and then anything else that is, that has us in hot water with the Department of Environmental Protection is, I think, a good starting point.
And
I
don't want to interrupt, but, the consent decree is just one piece. I just want to go back to when we go to get that bond, our engineer needs to certify that we are providing and maintaining our system adequately. So, yes, those projects are in there. Now, we talked about the wastewater treatment plant 1 conversion, existing conversion, $90 million facility. Can we push that off? Yes. It's not a mandated conversion mandate yet. What are the implications of doing that? We'll have basically 2 wastewater plants on one site because they're going to have 2 different operation systems that are going to run independently of one another. Is that an issue? Not necessarily. Is it going to be more costly to do in the future? Most likely. Can we push it off? Yes. So there's, a big ticket item on that second bond we can push out. We had brackish well expansion in there. We're at a cup limitation now with the district on freshwater uptake. So we do need to push along on brackish wells. Will they let us modify our cup permit for additional freshwater wells? Possibly, as long as we have in our plan that we are proceeding with our brackish wells in expansion for the plant. So we would still need to keep our monitoring wells in there, our design in there. Would they be comfortable if it's outside the 5-year window to do the brackish wells? That's an unknown. That's something, we'd have to address as we work through the process and permitting and going through with the district. So those are particular projects that could be pushed out. We could do half of the expansion for freshwater at Plant 3 to help with our current needs. The brackish wells and brackish expansion could be pushed out beyond the 5 years and off that second bond, potentially, because we did have talks with our consultant that does our capacity analysis, because we want to make sure they're comfortable with signing off on the letter when we go to the bond that we have a sound plan. Yeah. So those are 2 particular big ticket items that we could adjust in the plan. Now, if growth happens more than what we're projecting, we are going to have to come back and ask for that second bond. Yeah. But if we're on target and we can raise impact fees again in the next time around, and maybe impact fees are going to cover those costs of the projects as we can stagger them in over time. So I just want to be cautious of that about, trying to design and pick projects on the spot here. There's more to it.
Well, we're just trying to lay a framework, Carl. We're not trying to make any, snap decisions tonight. Well, I think we've already made enough, or lack thereof, decisions. But I would agree with you, Councilman Gambaro. That storage tank is up there on my to-do list too, because even with the flows, can you convert from one to the other? If we need to at any time in the city, if something happened and we were being inundated like we were during Milton, could we shift the flows to that major tank once we get it done? How many gallons is that one?
Yes, Mayor. I think even just with the rain we had yesterday, we would have used that EQ tank if we had it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't remember.
That's what I'm saying as far as shifting the flows. How many gallon tank is that we've asked for?
6 million.
6 million gallons.
So can I just try and help through this, right? So we're needing some direction on any type of analysis that you want to be ran for next week's hearing, because we do have a consultant that needs to put this together, so.
You got 2 weeks, right?
No, yeah. We try and finalize the agenda packet tomorrow, so we're definitely on a time crunch. Right. Staff is really concerned about, delaying some projects. Carl mentioned projects, yes, they can be delayed, but, respectively, we're trying to not put ourselves in the same position that you see ourselves from 2018. So when we're being cautious about which projects move forward or not, we want to remind, City Council and the public that we have no guarantees for any of this. There's no certainties that rates won't go up after the 2028 study. You know, we're going to look at impact fees, but we have to look at all of it again. We as staff can put together a proposal of trying to reduce the impact. Now, all of it is, you know, all delays have uncertainties and have risks, right? So Carl mentioned delaying the wastewater treatment plant 1 conversion out to the 6 to 10 year. That will require a future bond, but the impact is it could be higher on construction costs and having 2 treatment plants on the same site. And it's not an increase in efficiency, which we talk about often. So, you know, we also have to look at making sure, as Carl mentioned, it's a complete system so that not only are we moving forward with wastewater projects, but we're also identifying crucial water projects and water needs so that we're not in the same position in the water side. We've already met the 80% threshold that we should be planning for water expansion projects. So just want to be really cautious there that we do move forward on the water side at one of our oldest water facilities, which is Water Treatment Plant 1, and it has a special treatment process for cleaning the water. So if you would like, what I hear from City Council is that you want us to look at Bond 1, what are the key projects for the system, and come back to you next week with those key projects and the why. Is that helpful? Is that summarizing it?
City manager, from my perspective, it's very helpful. And the other item I wanted just to really, really emphasize, right? So as a small business owner, Mr. Mayor, you and I both know, right, that if I want to get a small business administration loan, right, for let's say $10 million, you better have hundreds of thousands of net revenue coming in to be able to cover, you know, servicing that mortgage. So in our case, I think what the consultant laid out for us is exactly the revenue flow that we need to be able to cover the bonds required up front, because towards the end, as the vice mayor pointed out last week, you know, some of that will be covered in impact fees. And so, or hopefully we get some federal funding. But in any case, the revenue has to be there in order for us to qualify for a bond to tackle any of these projects. And if we start to degrade that ability to do that, we won't be bond worthy to get some of these things done. So I just offer that for consideration. Over.
Yeah, this is a gut punch to our community, and the vice mayor knows it. She's been sitting in that chair for a minute, and the whole uproar about the moratorium. Think about what I said about, and we're pushing this on. We're pushing this on our residents. It's just keep pushing it. Just keep pushing it. Keep pushing it, and it's really it's quite sad that we are in this state. But if we're going to keep paying like that, we need to slow down the development. The home building, because like I said, just like my statement said, why would we collectively pay millions and millions of dollars for additional toilets when we don't need them? You know, it's crazy. We're over, the developers are overwhelming the system. We have too many houses coming in. We've already established that mistakes were made. At least 19,000 houses was a big mistake of approving those. Was there anybody sitting in staff positions saying, look, sir, ma'am, mayor, council, you can't do that. We don't have the capability to service those units.
I did. I mean, there were plenty of times when in the last 2 years, when there were applications in front of us for zoning variances, for density increases, and I was raising the flag over and over and over, and specifically because of water. So yes, to answer your question, and I think now finally we have a council that recognizes that this is an issue. So unfortunately, here we are.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
Yeah, so pushback on the 19,000 is that a lot of that stuff is land use, right? It's not something that we can say no to legally. 100% agree with variances and changes to density. That's where I agree with those issues, especially when we're converting something direly needed, commercial and industrial, to residential. So, 7,500 of that 19,000 is still ITT platted lots, so that was done 50 years ago. Some of the rest is zoning that was pre-existing Palm Coast, that was adopted by Palm Coast as it incorporated. So some of what we're talking about has nothing to do with this city and this council and the design, who has been managing this city for years since then. And what I can say is that in terms of that land use, that's something that we haven't had control of since the inception of Palm Coast because it pre-existed our existence, right? So if it existed there, we were legally required to maintain those same entitlements as we incorporated. The only time it changed is when the city actually worked with a landowner and said, hey, would you be okay with it being commercial here or not, right? And making those changes. And that was worked on, way back when. And so what I'm trying to get to is that we're kind of defined by something that was written or platted many, many years ago before we even existed. So I just want to push back a little bit that it's this big systemic thing that people have been taking advantage of the residents. It pre-existed the city, right? And so I fully agree with the conversation that we shouldn't be adding density to that same problem that pre-existed. We shouldn't be converting or flipping things to residential because, obviously if we're behind, adding more to the front end of that to try to catch up to is difficult. So I'm committed to trying to make this work and figure it out. I think this is critical to Palm Coast. And, we're talking about removing water treatment facility number 1 from some of the priority projects. And part of the conversations that I've had with people about this entire project is, specifically that and the aesthetic quality of that water and how we're going to make it better. And people say, well, if my water from this facility looks and tastes better, then I'm all on board with paying $30 extra a month. And so now we're removing that. So now I have to tell those people that, in fact, you will not be getting better water. At least not in the short term. I know that we're trying to figure it out. Hopefully we can come to some sort of resolution that I think makes everybody happy. I'm committed to that, so.
Yeah, we have 106,000 residents? What are we at now?
7.
Okay, right there in the center.
That was
so-
as the census?
No, that was our last,
It's the community survey.
yeah.
Yeah, so 107,000 residents. We need to be looking out for every one of them to the best ability, seeing how many people can be serviced the best by our decisions. And that includes people in this room on both sides, residents, builders, developers, tradesmen, retirees, kids, all of the above. So what is the decision that we can make that best services all of the widest swath of people? And I don't think that it's the bookends. It's always somewhere in the middle.
Yes.
So if we can get to somewhere in the middle and keep this train on the right path to getting that economic development in, I think that we're just on the precipice of really seeing our city change in a good way and seeing that tax base diversify. We just got to get over this right now.
So you have enough direction, city manager?
Yeah, let me just confirm,
Okay.
please, Mayor, is that this is on your agenda for next week because it was noticed on every single utility bill, so we do need to have it. But we will run an analysis to move forward with the first bond, identifying key projects for the system. And we will bring that back to you on the 18th.
I hate to do extra work, but, that's a lot of money, and it's a lot of pressure on our residents. you know, new people coming in, that may not be so bad. But for Margie Lee, that's living off Social Security, it's a big deal, you know, and I don't want to be a villain. I don't want to be a villain to the developers. I want business in here. God knows we need, Tony, you need to get on the phone and call your buddies and tell them to bring their businesses here, manufacturing businesses. That's what we need here. We can't sustain on a 90-10 split and expect to keep pushing it on the residents. It's not sustainable. It is not sustainable. And we got one or two ways. We either fix it and have the developers stop building so many houses, putting them in the system, or we're shut down by a consent decree from the state with heavy fines. So,
Neither is good for business.
no, ma'am, they are not. So are we?
Well, then, Mr. Mayor, then we need to stop using the word moratorium, because that's what's scaring off businesses from coming here.
It ain't scaring off anything, Councilman. I'm sorry.
I disagree.
Sorry. I'm sorry. It's not. That whole Westwood, I'm not worried about the Westwood expansion. I'm worried about what we have in our house right now and trying to get developers to convert some of the properties that they upzone, the residential, convert it back to industrial so we can market it to bring businesses here for more jobs and higher wages for our community. I don't think, by Mike Norris sitting on the dais and saying, if you guys don't play ball, I'm going to put in a moratorium. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. We do need to slow down. I've been here 20 years. I've watched it. And I struggled in 06, 09. I struggled. There's a reason I went to work in Okinawa. There's a reason I went to become a contractor in Iraq, because I had to make the money to sustain my family. So the pain has been felt before. Nobody's a lone ranger here. This is a joint effort, plain and simple. You got enough, city manager? You good?
Yes, sir.
All right, we don't have to go back to public comment because that's over. We were on our time.
I was just going to ask one thing. So we're comfortable with getting to your point about having kind of an engineering sign off on what we're going to do. We will be able to accomplish that in a shorter enough
We've had
time
those
span.
discussions already.
You've already started this, okay.
Yes.
Good.
You know, the initial plan we put together was the best planning to put the utility on solid ground and address our aging, outdated infrastructure. This modified plan's obviously going to have some caveats because we can't address everything. So
Yeah, I was just concerned with the, 7 days that,
Yes.
and obviously less than 7 days, that the entire math of everything crumbles if they're not willing to sign off for the bonds and those things.
yeah,
So-
we know what they're comfortable with, and
Okay.
I was going to say, I fully believe, Carl, that you know exactly what they're looking for and that you can work with the consultant to get there. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, anything else from the city council? Councilman Gambaro, you have anything? Seeing,
I think I'm good for now.
okay, thank you. Other members of the council?
I'm all tapped out.
I believe you. Legal counsel? Oh, I'm sorry, I did have one. Did you do enough research on the State Legislative Audit Committee? Did you have a chance to look that over? I
did.
couldn't send it to you guys, but the city manager got
I
it.
reviewed it, yes.
Okay, and what can we do to have them come down?
So it would have to be by a motion by this council,
Yes,
send it to the State Legislative Committee to do an audit.
Yeah.
You have to say what's the purpose of the audit, why, and they would have to accept it.
Okay.
But this council would have to pay for it.
okay, that's the thing I came to understand today. I spoke to the auditors. We went through the audit today of the city, the general audit, and we discussed it. And he said, if we initiate it through the legislature, we'd have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Our deal right now is we need to get the legislator to impose it where they pay for it. And I'll keep trying to reach out to Senator Collins and Representative Greco and say, look, we need it. We need it. I'm not comfortable with some of the practices that's gone on in the city, and we need you to come down and do it. That's my approach.
So in talking with the, our city auditors, the third-party auditors, earlier in the year, I specifically asked some of these questions, and they mentioned that, to trigger an audit of that level, typically what you have are warning signs, right? And that points them into those directions. And so I'm assuming that's what the legislature would need to initiate it from them at their end, is those things that say, hey, maybe there's not a problem, but maybe there is, because there's certain activities that are occurring that indicate or are indicative of bad behavior.
Less.
So I'm not sure
Well,
if we could produce those things, because I would assume our own audits would have found those same warning signs.
Well, as far as the books are concerned, Helena, they do a great job. What is the term used today, Helena? Where are we at? We're right in the middle. What is it called? You should know it. What is it? No significant
I need some context clues.
No significant findings. What's the term, Helena? You could have yelled that from the back. What is it? What is?
Nothing significant to report.
No, well, that's military.
That's it. Thank you.
Good evening, Helena
What's
Alves,
the
Financial
term,
Services
Helena?
Director. So the audit opinion that the auditors have issued to the city over the last several years is an unqualified opinion, which is the best opinion that you can get. It's what's
Yes.
called a clean opinion.
Yes, so we're right in the middle. Helena, I have no doubt you and your team do a great job, and Shannon's put in a lot of work. You told me she breaks her back working for us. So I think in an audit, and I had this conversation today with a constituent, a forensic audit is not going to find the corruption level that people think is going on in the city. They're not going to find if someone got a $10,000, $10,000 in cash handed to them. They're not going to find that. Gangsters know better than to do. They're not going to put it on the books for you to find it that simple. That's not the way things work in the world. So, but if we can, if some of the stuff that I have uncovered and my spider webs that I have, I can go to the legislature and talk to Senator Collins and Representative Greco and say, these are the things I found. Can we get someone to come down and do an operations audit of our city? If that relieves, the city's perception that our city is corrupt, I'm more than willing to do it. They can doge us all day, voluntarily. Come on down and do it. So that's my take on it. So I'll follow up with Senator Collins' counsel. Anything else from you?
Yes, I do have something.
Yeah.
I need to call an executive session, a shade meeting, to get your advice regarding the City of Palm Coast first BVI construction. So I'm putting out the notice right now. We will be scheduling that this coming next couple of weeks, but it's my requirement as your city attorney to put the notice out during a council meeting.
Okay, is that the water park?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, roger that. We're all up to speed on that. We're good to go?
Let's go.
Okay, anything else from the council?
Mr. Mayor, I've got one item.
Bolo. What you got?
Alibi. All right, and this one's a tough one, all right? And I need everybody to hear me out. So, I've got a lot of experience as a senior leader and an executive. And one of the things that senior leaders can get in trouble for is not taking action when an issue is brought to your attention. Failure to take action could be as bad as the action taken sometimes. But so I have a concern that was brought forward to me yesterday that I think we need to discuss. And that has to do with your request for the direct resignation of our staff, meaning the acting city manager and Mr. De Lorenzo in your office. I think it could be a major ethics violation. And it's my understanding that it's not the first time that you've tried to directly intimidate or to try to force the city manager to fire not only the chief of staff, but other members of our senior staff. Hey, hold on, I'm not done. I have the floor. And it's also my understanding that you carried out this request after our legal counsel, both Mr. Blocker and Mr. Duffy, advised you multiple times that your requests were inappropriate and in violation of the city charter. I'm also concerned in the manner in which you delivered it, kind of like in an Article 15 scenario, hey, this is a one-way conversation, and I'm going to ask for your immediate dismissal for your office, and then you just basically dismiss them. And so, city manager, can you confirm that these discussions occurred in this manner, yes or no?
Yes.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
So by your actions, Mr. Mayor, I'm really concerned. I really like working with you, but you may be creating a toxic work environment and one that may be, disseminating fear and intimidation across our staff that's really working hard to meet all of our demands. And so, as such, I'm formally asking my fellow council members, not you, Mr. Mayor, for consensus to formally request an independent look at this investigation at next Tuesday's council business meeting into these serious allegations, Mr. Mayor. We need to take an independent look to address these issues, but failure to not address the concerns when they're brought to you is, in my mind, not an option. So over to Councilman Miller and the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, so I think it's very concerning because the charter directly prohibits any member of this council from directing staff decisions that are solely the purview of the city manager. Anything below the city manager is the city manager's responsibility in terms of hiring and firing. So that's one. Two, directing the city manager without the consensus of the council is also a violation of the city charter. And then it's very hard to get past this because my concern here is that if we're not playing by the rules, then they're going to be abused. And whether it's you, Mr. Mayor, or me, or Councilman Gabarro, or the Vice Mayor doing it, it's still wrong fundamentally. You have my support, Councilman Gabarro, for an independent investigation because that's how we figure out whether this is right or wrong. To me, what I've heard, these are blatant violations of the city charter.
Can I go ahead?
No, go ahead.
Vice Mayor.
Mayor, go ahead.
No.
I'll cede the floor to you right now, and I'll come back. Yeah.
There's three people that were in that room when we had our conversation yesterday, and how can I put this? I said that I was going to discuss with the council, about this, and it's a little bit of frustration, but we are under a lot of pressure here, and me and Lauren. We had a good conversation today, and it's a lot of frustration. But I certainly didn't do what's being said, and council was on the phone. And this city council, not with me on it, has violated the city charter. The council violated the city charter. When they appointed Councilman Gambaro, they violated the city charter. And I've brought that forth to Mr. Duffy and Mr. Blocker. So we had a conversation, but what I said was I was going to discuss with the council. And I wasn't even going to bring up that discussion tonight because I think we're where we need to be. We are working together. And I think Lauren understood I was a bit frustrated, but I certainly didn't tell her to fire anybody because I know better than to do that. I would never do that.
You just said you did.
So,
Well, wasn't Mr. DeLorenzo in the meeting too?
Yes.
What's a problem?
We were talking. I said I was going to talk because of my frustration to the council.
So
And I have not directed anyone to do it. I'm an above board kind of guy. And I'm frustrated. I am frustrated that we're in this situation. But I did not tell Miss Lauren Johnson to fire anybody. I said I was going to discuss with the council what we need to do to fix this city.
She just confirmed that it happened that way, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. That's the problem. And then the other issue you have is that our own council is witness.
Yes.
Okay, so
he was on the phone call, and I was
okay.
when we were talking, I was actually talking about the two positions. I know there's only two positions I can hire and fire. Or
Well,
council
Mr.
can
Mayor,
hire-
yes.
That council can hire and fire. I know that for a fact. But I have not directed what, we can take whatever actions we need to, but, you know. I think Lauren understands my frustration. We had quite an ordeal today. So, but you do what you got to do. If you want to investigate, go right ahead.
So I'll be brief. My position on this is, we're all under a lot of pressure, and we have 5 seats up here because we are supposed to get consensus for everything, every decision, whether it's a supermajority, majority, whether it's a workshop, and we're all just trying to get something across the finish line to further investigate like we decided to with the utilities tonight. No decision is to be unilaterally made. From what I hear, it definitely warrants looking into, and I encourage this to be a reminder, regardless of what is determined and discovered, that there's not a single person on this board that has the ability to make these types of decisions and impose their will in this way.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to say about this, though, too, is we've talked about this before. The city manager position is not elected, but it is political. We can't treat it as if it's something that you can just willy-nilly get rid of and find somebody else. We cannot continue to go through what we're going through right now. And I don't know, the fact that we have 5 quality candidates, and I think they're all quality, that we get to talk to and that are interested in coming to our city to be our city manager is a blessing, particularly in light of things like this. This is not healthy for our city. Decisions like this need to be thought of high level in a robust way. And I understand, Mayor, that you could have been frustrated. Whatever happened that facilitated anything even close to this, I understand you're frustrated. We're all kind of frustrated under a lot of stress for a lot of different reasons. But you said it earlier, we have workshops for a reason. We should have workshopped it. We should have talked about it. They are adults. She has the ability to sit down there and listen to constructive criticism, and we talk about things. Poor Carl Cody gets thrown under the bus more than any staff member I know, and the guy has not been in the position that he's in now for very long to warrant the type of abuse he takes. But we have to talk about those things, and that's how people get educated, us included. So just regardless of what comes out on the other end of this, I support the direction of council, of city council, my colleagues. But let's just keep that in mind, okay? We have, obviously, sunshine that we have to battle, so we can't talk. Let's talk about things up here. Let's be adults about things up here. And that's how we get to the bottom, and that's how this republic works the way it's supposed to work.
Okay. Anything further? Council, anything? Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Adjourn.